Thank you and good evening. Welcome to the May 6th meeting of the governing body. If you will give your attention to Council Member Banks, he will provide the invocation. Stand as you are able, and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Can we bow our heads, please? Dear God, our Father in heaven, thank you for all the blessings that you've given and bestowed upon us. For we know, God, that without your grace and your mercy, there would be no us. There would be no tomorrow, and there would be no today. So God, we ask you, in helping our leaders for this country, help them to see, open their eyes to the divisiveness that is causing this country to affect a lot of people, the elderly, children, and certainly people that need help that will not get that help if we do not reduce the divisiveness. Father God, we ask you to come into this chamber tonight to help this body, not just to make decisions based on their districts, but this entire community. Father, we ask that you help us to make decisions based on principle and righteousness in order for us to do the will of this community and your will, God. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good job, David. Thank you. I want to make sure I call this meeting to order. And we'll move now to roll call, Madam Clerk.
Council members Hiller. Yeah, we still got to do roll call.
Okay, just checking.
Valdivia Akla,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Banks,
Yes.
Kell,
Here.
Miller,
Yes.
Dobler,
Here.
Duncan,
Here.
Hofer,
Here.
and Mayor Padilla.
Here.
Okay, we have 10 present.
Okay, we have a couple of proclamations this evening. If I may have Will Sharp join me up here at this microphone. Okay, this first proclamation is in recognition of National Bike Month. A proclamation by the mayor. Whereas today millions of Americans engage in bicycling as a substantial form of transportation, an excellent form of commuting, fitness, and for quality family time, and whereas the City of Topeka Metropolitan Topeka Planning Organization, the MTPO, and Complete Streets Advisory Committee and its community representation promote greater implementation of safe bicycle facilities across the community, public awareness of bicycle operation and safety education, and whereas the MTPO will continue to implement bicycle facilities in all projects and will update Topeka's master plan this year to achieve a future low-stress, high-use network, having already completed a total of 96.41 miles of on-street bikeways with an additional expansion currently under construction. And whereas Topeka is one of 5 cities in Kansas with bronze-level bicycle-friendly community status, and is also the time of year for people to celebrate Bike to Work Week from May 12th to May 18th, 2025. And whereas bicycling offers an opportunity to invest in more equitable access to key resources for communities and households without a car. And whereas investing in connected and protected bike lanes and related facilities can be beneficial for local businesses and economic development. And greater support for biking policies, plans, and projects will be an integral part of addressing climate change. Now therefore, I, Michael A. Padilla, Mayor of the City of Topeka, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2025 as National Bike Month and encourage all citizens of Topeka to participate in National Bike Month and ride on a trail or bikeways to work for fun or to destination to show your support. And in witness thereof, I, Michael A. Padilla, Mayor of the City of Topeka, Kansas, do hereby affix my official signature and the official seal of the City of Topeka, Kansas on the 6th day of May 2025. Sir, I'm presented with this proclamation. Would you like to make a comment with regard to this? In support of it? Mr. Stratton? Yes, sir.
Yes, this is just our annual recognition of the local bicycle infrastructure, whether it be the on-street bike paths or the trails, just promoting an active lifestyle and another mode of transportation alternative to using cars and lowering carbon emissions for the city. So appreciate it and thank you.
You say something. Now may I have Christine Wills? And entourage.
Yes.
That's good, bring them on. Okay, this second proclamation is in recognition of Mental Health Awareness Month, a topic that is really important for this community and has really seen a lot of support in many areas and from many communities and from many organizations that really are trying to expand our abilities to address this issue. So a proclamation by the mayor. Whereas mental health is an essential part of overall health and well-being, impacting individuals across Topeka, Shawnee County, and Kansas, and whereas 1 in 5 American adults experiences a mental health condition each year, and everyone faces challenges in life that it can impact their mental health, and whereas despite its prevalence, mental health remains shrouded in stigma, preventing many from seeking help. And whereas engaging in prevention, early identification, and early intervention care are crucial for managing mental health conditions and improving the quality of life. And whereas with effective treatment, all individuals with mental illness, even serious mental illness, can make progress toward recovery and lead full, productive lives. And whereas each business, school, government agency, healthcare provider, organization, and citizen have a responsibility to promote mental health and well-being for all. And whereas May is recognized as Mental Health Awareness Month, providing an opportunity to combat stigma, promote mental health resources, and turn awareness into action. And therefore, I, Michael A. Padilla, Mayor of the City of Topeka, Kansas, do proclaim the month of May 2025 as Mental Health Awareness Month. I encourage all citizens to turn awareness into action and to seek help for themselves or others who are struggling with mental health, to support organizations that provide mental health services and advocacy, and to create safe and supportive spaces for open conversations about mental health. In witness whereof, I, Michael A. Padilla, Mayor of the City of Topeka, Kansas, do hereby affix my official signature and the official seal of the City of Topeka, Kansas on the 6th day of May 2025. And who wishes to receive this? Thank you, Christine. Would you like to say a few words?
Just want to thank the city for all the support and the funding that we get to make our work possible. We appreciate it very much.
Amy?
I would just like to say that mental health matters every single day. And if you personally are not someone who struggles with a mental health issue, perhaps your neighbor, your coworker, your friend, neighbor, they might be having an issue, and it may not always be visible. Mental health, sometimes the symptoms are not visible to others. And so what you can do is simply ask. Don't hesitate to ask how someone is doing. And please reach out if you do need help yourself or your family needs help. Vallejo has a crisis center that's open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And we do serve people without the ability to pay for the services. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the next agenda item, appointments. Madam Clerk.
A is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Miranda Chavez Hassan to the Noto Business Improvement District Advisory Board to fill a term ending May 6, 2027.
Okay, you've heard the appointments is read. Is there a motion from the body? Okay, I have a motion from Councilman Dobler and a second from Deputy Mayor Kell.
Correct? We're ready to vote.
Okay, you're able to vote now.
All right, we have 9 yes, the motion carries.
Okay, motion's been carried, and I saw Miranda come into the room. If I could ask you to stand so we could acknowledge your willingness to serve, and thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on now to presentations. Madam Clerk.
The presentation we have tonight is City of Topeka Quarterly Financial Report.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the governing body. Josh McInerney, our Division Director of Budget and Finance, will lead us through this item.
Good evening, Mayor, governing body. So tonight, we're presenting kind of the first quarter financial statements for the city. Obviously, this is still pretty early since we budget straight line and some of our expenses come in the back half of the year, and a lot of our revenue, such as property tax, comes in the first half of the year and the disbursement of property taxes. So this is the agenda. We'll kind of be reviewing on where we stand in the first quarter, where we're projected to be. We'll go through some of the other major funds too, such as parking, utilities, and then some of the internal service funds. So on your screen right now is the revenue summary, first quarter this year versus first quarter last year. Kind of some key things to take in mind is the sales tax. We're not really down $3 million. It's just a latent period since we collect 2 months behind. So as of this date, we've only collected 2 months, while last year we obviously had 3 months. And then information to take away from that is through 2 months this year, we're basically flat collection-wise last year, which is pretty typical. Some good news is the franchise fees. Those are coming in way higher. That's from Kansas Gas and the Evergy payments that we get from operating our right-of-way. That is significantly higher this year, and we're projecting that to stay the course, to where that's some icing on the cake compared to budget. And that was probably an overcorrection on my part. From last year, we were about $2 million budget underrun, and so we kind of really wanted to temper expectations for 2025. And then finally, on the property tax, yes, we did collect $2 million more in property tax. That's because we didn't raise the mill levy, but we exceeded the revenue neutral rate, and we captured the appreciation of property values. And then we also shifted $1 million last year from our debt service fund into our general fund, which means we're going to get, we would have gotten $1.4 million in totality this year compared to last year. So that's how revenue is. Obviously, it's still early, 3 months in, and then I think In July, we'll have 4 months of sales tax, 6 months of franchise fees, basically all our property tax collected. So we'll have a really good idea first week of July where we'll probably end the year revenue-wise. On the expense side, kind of the same story where only really material increase was the personnel expenses compared this year compared to last year. That's because obviously we have new union contracts online, and those had some changes. Some other items of note, and then contractual commodity line items. We did have a taser payment in police. That was higher this quarter than last year's quarter. That's just a timing issue to where the expense was booked in Q2 of last year and it's booked in Q1 of this year. So timing issues on some of those variances, but bottom line is those first 4 rows, expenses are flat basically compared to this year to last year materially, and then the personnel item is the only one that's significantly higher. I wanted to take a little bit time to talk about the vacancy credit last night. So last year's in the budget cycle, we've had a lot of open positions, and we set a vacancy credit of about $2.4 million inside the budget. And obviously, we need to make sure we beat that credit or at least meet it on the personnel side, because if we don't meet it, that means we're going to actually exceed the budget. So through 8 of the 26 pay periods, we are on pace to slightly beat the vacancy credit by $500,000. So our total personnel budget, which includes base wages, overtime, healthcare, any ad pays that employees might have, was about $96.8 million. If we projected that out for the rest of the pay periods, accounting for holiday pay, the months with 3 pay periods, and any one-time bonuses there are inside contracts, we'd probably be about at $96.2 million. Now, that's given this current employment roster. So if people were to leave, that number's going to go down. If we add people, the number's going to go up. But that's where we are at with the current employment roster. And then 2 other things I wanted to say is on the non-personnel expenses, a little too early to say if we're going to be over or under on budget on that as of now, just because we have another snow event or this winter that could blow up commodities line item, et cetera. And then I also wanted to say, if we're under budget, that's a good thing, but we also need to take into account there has to be revenue on the other side to cover it. So being under budget's one side of the equation. The other side is we need to make sure that revenue's there to meet it, because if the revenue's not there to meet it, obviously we'd be spending down reserves even further. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, so our enterprise funds. So what enterprise funds are in relation to our annual report are basically our funds that operate under business type principles. So for example, I'll just go through parking. Parking, we charge citizens for use of our parking garages, any on-street parking enforcement, et cetera. That's how the money comes into the fund. Then obviously we spend it on employees, and then anything we have to do repair-wise to the parking garages, things of that nature. And so what this table shows you is what our beginning cash balance was at the start of 2025, the revenues we generated through the first quarter, the expenses in the fourth column in the first quarter, and then what our current cash balance would be as the end of Q1. Now, I did also put on the screen of end of quarter 1 days on cash for utilities. Our minimum days on cash on hand is 180. Each combined, I think we're at 210. I didn't write that down, I apologize, but we are meeting our minimum fund balance policies in each one of our funds, which is what we should be doing. But I just wanted to give the governing body a heads up of where things stand on the enterprise funds through the first quarter. Next are an internal service funds. So what an internal service fund is we charge other funds to pay for that service within the city. So an example would be with the facilities fund. So every single department derives a benefit off our facilities department. So the way that revenue goes into this fund is we charge about the general fund 65 to 70%, and then utilities fund a great portion of the other, and about 25%, and then some of those other funds, the other 10%, to where that's how money goes into the fund, and then we spend it on the salaries or any new equipment they may need, things of that nature. Now, one thing to keep in mind is we are carrying negative cash balances in IT and facilities. That was because in 2023, we did not charge appropriately to recoup that revenue. So part of that was not charging the general fund or those other funds enough to cover the expenses that were in that fund. Now, that is okay to a certain extent because the way our annual report looks at those funds is it combines all these funds together because technically it's all the city's money in those funds at the end of the day. But that's something we eventually want to get back to, having those funds be in the positive. But right now, we're okay since the cash is covering any negative fund balances that we are carrying. And now in the risk funds, that is our property and vehicle insurance, any workers' compensation, and health insurance fund, and unemployment compensation. That's, besides health insurance, we charge a certain percentage of employees' salary. That's how revenue goes into those funds. And then if we have any claims or if people leave, that's what those expenses are. And we've been carrying large surpluses the last couple of years of those, which is a good thing in this case. And then finally, this does not take into fact our net pension liability to where we do not have enough, if all our employees retired, we don't have enough money on hand. This is pretty typical for most cities to pay that all in one go, but the odds of that happening are probably pretty slim, but that's just something to keep in mind. If you look at our annual report, there is a large net pension liability. And then our final fund that we're talking about tonight, one of the major funds, the Special Highway Fund. We've kind of briefed with the governing body on this in the past that fund is a very stagnant revenue source through the gas tax, but there are rising expense costs to where we're either going to have to either cut expenses in that fund or make a revenue infusion via another fund to keep that going in 2026. Part of the reason Q1 expenses were so high is because there was they helped out with the snow event. We pre-bought de-icer material, so that makes some sense to where the quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4 expenses will be much lower on average. Most of those expenses actually happen in the first quarter of the year in this fund. Then some other items of note, I've already mentioned the Special Highway Fund, but Health Insurance Fund, just to put on the governing body's radar, we've had some high claims to where the amount of claims we're paying out versus the money we're paying into the fund the expenses are exceeding the revenues, but there is still there is a built-up fund balance in there, but that's something as when we talk about in the budget conversations, we're eventually going to have to make a decision because we can't spin down fund balance forever. Eventually, we're going to have to be revenue neutral at the very worst. So that in a nutshell is kind of the high-level overview of the quarterly report. Obviously, stand for questions, and also I'm sure there's if anything I can't answer, we can touch base with later on too. So,
Thank you, Josh. Any questions from the body? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much,
yeah,
Josh.
thanks.
Move on to the next agenda item, Madam Clerk.
A and B are resolutions introduced by Councilmember Valdivia Acala, granting Sacred Heart St. Joseph Roman Catholic Parish and Caw Valley Bank an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at C concerning noise prohibitions. C is approval of a professional services contract amendment between the City of Topeka and WSP USA Incorporated for providing for professional engineering services for the design of sidewalks through right-of-way plans for Northwest Lyman Road from Vale to Tyler. D is approval of a professional service contract amendment between the City of Topeka and JEO Consulting Group, Inc. for providing for the rehabilitation plans and design of 3 levee outfall structures. E are minutes of the regular meeting of April 1, April 8, and April 15, 2025. And there's a list of cereal malt beverage off-premise renewals, and staff is recommending approval.
Okay. The body's heard the consent agenda is read. Is there a motion from the body? Have a motion from Councilman Miller, a second from Councilwoman Hiller. All those ready to vote, Madam Clerk?
Okay, we're ready to vote. Okay, we have 10 yes, the motion carries.
Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 6. Madam Clerk, when you're ready.
A is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Dr. Robert Perez concerning parking in the downtown central business district, amending sections 10.05.010, 1060, 320, 330, 340, 150, 160, 200, 220, and 230 of the Topeka Municipal Code and repealing original sections.
Okay, Mr. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the governing body. Jason Tryon, our Deputy Director of Public Works, will lead us through this item.
Jason?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is an item that we had on the agenda 3 weeks ago. Just to recap, since our last meeting was a few weeks back, the ordinance in front of you would do a number of different things that would impact downtown parking. The first would be that it would increase the parking rates in our parking garages from the current monthly fee of $67.75 to $74. It would increase the price of 10-hour meters from 50 cents per hour to $1 per hour, so that all of our meters would then be charged the same price. It would increase the cost of a 10-hour monthly meter permit from $44 to $74. It would add code language to apply the current policies of the Kansas Avenue block zone to the entire downtown area. This would effectively eliminate the problem that we refer to as leapfrogging that can occur throughout the downtown area. And it would also add language to allow reserved spaces to include downtown businesses seeking for-profit sales. And it would introduce designated and signed 15-minute pickup spaces along Kansas Avenue that would replace the current orange cones and signage that you see out in front of some of the restaurants on Kansas Avenue. It would also relax some of the restrictions in some of our outlying areas to allow more 4-hour free parking. And then you also have a resolution that would increase the prices, or would reinstitute paid parking on Kansas Avenue and the 100 blocks east and west of Kansas Avenue. That would take place as of January 1st, 2026. But that is the resolution that will be voted on next. So with that, I'll take any questions from the body.
Any questions at all, Councilman Dobler?
Yes. No questions, Jason. I think you covered all this really well in the past few weeks. I'm going to make a couple of comments and then propose a couple of amendments, both on this ordinance and the accompanying resolution. So we have talked about parking since I got on the council, literally almost 6 years. It's time we do something. And in my mind, I kind of break this into 3 components: the garages, Kansas Avenue, and then the 100 blocks either side of Kansas Avenue. We have put, as a council, we have put a lot of general fund money into rehabbing the parking garages. And we need to protect our investment. So I am fully in support of the rate increases in the parking garages. Kansas Avenue is a different matter. Since 1985, parking on Kansas Avenue has been free. This is a difficult time. It's been a difficult time for merchants on Kansas Avenue and other places in the downtown since COVID, certainly. And I think it is necessary to provide some incentive for folks to come downtown and shop. So I'm going to introduce in just a second an amendment that would keep parking free on Kansas Avenue between 6 and 10. And then finally, the 100 blocks either side of Kansas Avenue. Again, since 1985, we've had parking meters since well before 1985. We've had parking meters on the 100 blocks. And I think that, I mean, at some point you just have to pick a point and say, we're going to put meters here. So I think at some point we have to reinstitute the meters on the 100 blocks. I am going to introduce an amendment that's a little bit of a compromise that's just going to say we'd move that date from January 1, 2026 to January 1, 2027. So give them another year to get ready for parking meters back in the 100 blocks. So, you know, these amendments are a little bit of a compromise. I know the people that work and do business and shop downtown would love to see us keep everything the way it is. We simply can't afford to do that. And I know our finances are going to be tight, and I know we're looking at some austere times in a couple of years with the parking fund. But I think this compromise isn't going to make anybody particularly happy, but sometimes those are the best compromises. So with the mayor's permission, I'm going to introduce an amendment to the item we're on right now, the ordinance, that would, in section 5, at the end of the sentence on line 142, it will add, no parking meter zone shall be established on Kansas Avenue between 6th Avenue and 10th Street. And I assume we just take these one at a time, ordinance first and then resolution. So I will stop there with that amendment and hopefully get a second on that. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Councilman Dobler has offered an amendment. I see, is there,
Second.
Is that a motion? Do I do motion here? Or do I make some motion, or what do I do?
yeah,
We can, we absolutely
Let's not. Let's just say we did it.
yeah.
can. So we have Dobler, Decker?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll add that.
So we have a motion from Councilman Dobler, a second from Councilman Duncan. I also see Councilman Miller and then Councilwoman Hiller have indicated they wish to speak to the motion. Councilman Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. I hear what you're saying, Councilman Dobler. I'm curious, though, I would like to see the impact to the projected numbers if we were to change that date one year back, and how that would impact.
So we estimate that the cost of parking on the 100 blocks east and west of Kansas Avenue is worth approximately $100,000 per year. That is obviously a very round number because that is an estimate, because we have not charged on those blocks since at least 2017. So how that would affect people's patterns is very difficult to predict, but we estimate that that would be worth approximately $100,000. We estimate that the Kansas Avenue area is worth approximately $250,000. We've made those estimates and that number would be annually. We make those estimates based on how occupied those spaces are throughout the day. We have some knowledge that we can take some sampling based on our mark sheets, but again, as we change prices, we can't predict how that will change behavior. So there are a lot of assumptions built into those estimates.
Okay. And so, before when you gave us the numbers, you said that the balance, or we would start losing money necessarily at the end of 2026, correct?
So currently we operate at between $450,000 to $500,000 per year annual net loss within the parking fund. One of the numbers that you saw earlier in Josh's presentation was the current balance of the parking fund, which we estimate that balance will run out in August of 2027. If these changes were adopted, obviously we would expect some increase in revenue, which could potentially push that date where the parking fund would become insolvent back to 2028, possibly 2029. But it would take a lot of projection and a lot of math to figure out exactly when that would occur. The reason I predicted that would take place in August is because that's when we make our one large payment per year on the debt service. So that is a very large amount that is paid in August of every year.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, my screen was cleared. But I remember that next was Councilwoman Hiller. There you go. And then Councilman Duncan, and then Councilwoman Ortiz. Councilwoman.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, lots to say. I want to clarify for everyone, and staff, Jason, and legal can back this up, but I think we need to remember as we go into this discussion that the ordinance itself is framed to be a flexible ordinance that sets rate minimums and maximums and gives the staff the authority to set the actual rates or to start and stop the charging. And so we want to be careful if we're considering changing the ordinance. Something we realized when this got proposed the first time was that the rates themselves are up to the staff not up to us to vote on. We set it up so that we didn't vote on the rates. We just vote, at this point, that resolution, which comes after this one, is about whether we start and stop any of it. So I would caution about amending the ordinance itself regarding rates, thinking that that would control when we start and stop. Overall, this is complex enough that I'll just throw that out right now. I think maybe we need to talk through this evening, and there may need to be some time for people to think about it or read things again before we vote. I'll have some comments overall. Staff has worked with me on some other amendments, but we can talk this one through first, and I'll wait.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Duncan.
Just two quick things. First, just a clarification, because I just want to make sure this vote doesn't have the timeline built in yet, right? That's the next.
That's right.
So we're talking, the primary thing that this ordinance does, besides some of the small changes, is it would allow the parking garage changes to go into effect, price changes. And then with the amendment, would not put any meters on between 6th and 10th.
Correct. Our parking code has two different types of zones. You have the metered zones, which is where we charge money, and then time zones, which is the 2 hours. This would not impact the time zones at all on Kansas Avenue. You would still have the 2 hours. But what it would say is the discretion that Councilwoman Hiller was talking about does not apply to Kansas Avenue. The parking superintendent cannot establish from 10th to 6th a paid meter zone or establish rates for that area. And then the parking garage is not part of this ordinance at all as proposed, so it would go into effect under staff's discretion.
Okay, right. I just, that was make sure I understood what this vote is versus the next vote on the implementation date. And then my second issue, and I had this same issue, and when we saw this in our committee before it came here, was I think we should vote on the rates. I'm fine when staff makes those recommendations and comes to us and says, this is going to be the rate for this period of time, but I do think that should be something we have some input in, because that becomes a long-term policy decision, and I just think that we should own that and make those decisions. So I would like to see tweak there, but I've expressed that before. But thank you, Mayor. Just want to get that initial clarification.
Thank you. Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I want to be sure, Jason, you said this is in the 100 block of Kansas Avenue?
So this would be in the 100 blocks east and west of Kansas Avenue. So
Well, with all the viaduct work going on, isn't that going to take a whole bunch of properties and clear all that out?
No.
I mean, you're looking at numbers, but I'm looking at how empty it is. We don't have Let's Help down there. Well, we won't, or it's kind of moved.
So this would be the 100 blocks east and west of Kansas Avenue. The viaduct would be primarily in the blocks, north of Kansas Avenue. So this is primarily on the blocks from 6th through 10th Street, on the first block east and west of Kansas Avenue. So most of the viaduct work and the impact there will be north of 6th Street, and this is specifically affecting 6th through 10th.
Okay, that makes more sense, because I'm thinking if it's further north with all that and everybody leaving, okay. And this amendment is only for that parking, right? Am I correct? The amendment that you made is only for,
It's only for Kansas Avenue between 6th and 10th.
that it continues to stay free?
free.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So we have a motion and a second on an amendment. We'll call for the vote for the amendment.
Yes.
Sorry. So we're done speaking on that? Where everybody's made their comments, correct?
I see.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilmember Dobler, and we have a second by Councilmember Duncan. There we go. Okay.
I see Councilwoman Hiller, who has requested to speak, or is it a second time?
Yes.
Just to make a comment that I think it's premature for us to do this and to make such a great change in the enabling ordinance instead of in our resolution. Thank you. So I would vote no, just because I'm willing to talk about it, but we get $250,000 on the table and a system of getting people to park in the garages. But again, if the resolution is the place to do that, not here, I'm concerned. Thank you.
Does everybody understand the amendment made by Councilman Dobler? If so, then we'll proceed on voting for the amendment to the ordinance.
Okay. So he can put it on the amendment then. Okay. The motion failed. We have 5 yes with council members. No, it passes, I'm sorry, because it should be, well, it's the amendment.
The mayor doesn't vote on home rule ordinances, so it's 5-4, so it passes, but it's confused because it thinks the mayor votes and it's a new system, so we're all learning.
Well, you're welcome.
Because I thought it could vote on amendments. You can?
But it would still pass if he abstains, because abstains goes with the majority.
Okay, so the motion carries?
Yes.
So the motion carried.
Okay, motion carries. Council members Hiller, Banks, Kell, and Miller voted no.
So
Mayor
now,
does not vote.
so now are we at a point to vote? Let's see, you got to clear my screen there. On the ordinance as amended, is there a motion? I'm trying to clear my screen here.
There we go. Yes. There you go. Now you're back to square one.
Okay. So am I correct? We vote now on the ordinance as amended?
Correct.
Because the amendment
And
passed.
we need a motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Need a motion to vote on this, on the ordinance as amended. Okay, a motion from Councilman Dobler, second by Councilman Duncan.
So if I take him out. Okay. Are we ready to vote?
Well,
Nope. We got Councilmember Hiller is signed up to speak, has requested to speak.
Councilwoman?
Everyone has a packet in front of them. I've spent the last month working with staff on this ordinance. When they started, so I think it was handed out by a place today. There are a substantial number of amendments. They are simply cleanup amendments. What happened was when this ordinance was first drafted, what it's doing, for instance, is shifting the discussion about coins and parking meters to time-limited zones and block zones and so on. And when it first was introduced, only the sections that had certain changes in them were updated to address the change in what we have overall. We are in the process of moving the entire system from having parking meters and coins to apps or a time-limited zone that then if you stay too long, you'll get a ticket. And so we really needed to sweep through and clarify all of that language. So went back and forth on this. What you have in front of you, the new piece today, is all of the staff's changes as well as substantial additional ones for that cleanup that we worked on through the month. And so we've got it all ready for you, but people just got it this evening. So I'm prepared to move these amendments. I also think, though, that people might want to look through them and make sure they were familiar with what was there. Again, substantial cleanup so that when you go from a section that had one of the staff's changes to the next section, they all sync up in terms of their reference to the parking spaces, reserving parking spaces. You no longer do hoods if there's no meter to hood, so you have to change the language to talk about signage and so on. And that's these kind of cleanup changes that you have in front of you as well. I can walk you through them, or one of us can, but there are a lot of them, and they're really cleanup.
Okay, I have a request to speak by Councilman Dobler and then Councilman Duncan.
Thank you, Mayor. If this is the staff's changes, why is the other ordinance on the agenda tonight?
That's a great question.
I do not want to speak for the parking division. I believe a lot of these cleanup changes are discretionary choices. For instance, staff used the definition, we defined coin-operated to mean all of those other ones, so it is correct in the original ordinance, but it was a preference choice that Councilwoman Hiller requested.
Very good. Thank you.
Councilman Duncan?
Is this, what we have in front of us is relating to downtown parking, right? The thing we had in our packet tonight, the row is,
Yes.
this has more than downtown parking in it, correct?
This is the same ordinance.
Okay.
This is the same ordinance that was put out at first.
Okay, I'm just a little amazed at how much it is to just get today.
Well, the single line.
And I've learned from you, sincerely, Councilwoman Hiller, that the worst thing that can happen to us is to be handed something right before a meeting and asked to vote on it.
Staff gave it back to me this morning. I've been working on it for 4 weeks. So,
Okay.
and I understand that because I totally agree. That's why I said I wanted us to maybe talk about it this evening and vote on it next week.
Okay. Councilwoman Ortiz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This also, there's College Hill on here. Yeah, so I would agree. Can we postpone this for a week? I make a motion to substitute, is there a motion?
Yeah, there's a motion.
I'll make a substitute motion that we postpone this for a week, because there's,
I guess as a point of clarification, the motion on the floor is to pass the original ordinance. There is not yet a motion on the substitute ordinance that Councilwoman Hiller has introduced. So is the motion to postpone the entirety, or what's the motion?
the motion is to postpone it entirely, so we could look at both of them and understand what we're doing, because I don't understand, maybe they do, but I don't. Because this also has College Hill in it, which I understand we do some things over there as well, but I can't vote on this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Dobler?
So we pass ordinances every week, for the most part. If we pass this ordinance tonight that's in front of us, that's on the floor now, I'm going to call it the simple ordinance because it's a lot thinner, with the amendment that I suggested, which is already passed, we could come back and do any cleanup on that ordinance at any time from here to years from now. Correct? I suggest we go ahead and pass this ordinance and then take a look at what Councilwoman Hiller has suggested, and we can bring that back as a cleanup ordinance next week or the week after or sometime in the future. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Valdivia Acala?
Thank you, Mayor. Clarification, what you're talking about, the ordinance that's in the binder, go with that, plus your amendment. This can all have the added verbiage later and can talk about that. I can support that.
Councilwoman Ortiz?
Amanda, does this, if we vote on what's the amendment, does that include College Hill? Does that include it at all?
No. I believe Councilwoman Hiller's goal was to clean up the entire parking code, and that is why College Hill is included in there. Staff's original goal was simply to deal with downtown parking and its immediacy, and Jason can probably better speak to that.
Yeah, so when the College Hill TIF district was created, there was provisions within the downtown parking ordinance that allowed the downtown parking control officers to also issue citations and patrol in College Hill. That has not been a practice for many years. So this, as part of the downtown parking ordinance, would remove the authority of the downtown parking control officers to patrol or issue citations in College Hill, hence why it's included in the downtown parking ordinance.
That should have never been, I didn't vote for that, that should have never been. How we can just go way across town. But anyway. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'd like to go ahead and encourage us as a council to act on this ordinance as amended that we voted for. And then that doesn't prohibit other council members who want to seek more clarification, more detail, whatever, to pursue it and work towards that goal of making wholesale changes to the entire ordinance. So I think this speaks to an issue that we're first concerned about right now in the downtown area. So I would encourage, although I don't have a vote, I would encourage you to consider this ordinance with the approved amendment. Councilwoman Hiller.
Point of order, our council rules say that we cannot reconsider for 6 months something that we have just voted on, and some of those amendments clean up items that the original proposal had. So if we want to do that, we'd be needing, I think, to exempt ourselves from our own rules to do that. Just a clarification.
Councilman Duncan.
So I guess two things, and I'm sure legal is looking it up as we speak. I guess the first thing is I wouldn't consider this a reconsideration because we're not trying to take another vote on the same exact thing. We're just, again, making changes to the parking ordinances, and even if you're doing those similar changes, I don't, I mean, legal will tell us, but for what it's worth, I don't view it. I guess worst case scenario is we can override our own rules with a vote by bringing anything as long as somebody on the opposing side brings it up, and if the rest of it, 2/3 can bring it back. And I have a feeling if most of these changes are just clerical cleanups, we won't have a problem there. Famous last words, I know, but I don't, for whatever it's worth, but like I said, legal, I don't view it as a re-bringing up. I just view it as another, more amendments to the parking code.
Thank you. Legal, do you want to offer an opinion on Councilman Duncan's?
Oh, sure, why not? The rule is 4-month wait period on reconsiderations. However, to Councilman Duncan's point, if a governing body member wishes to make a motion to bring that and waive that rule in advance, as long as you notify the rest of the governing body that you will bring the motion the week before, only a majority vote is needed to reconsider it prior to that 4 months. If you want to surprise the rest of your colleagues, 7 votes is needed to reconsider something. So there is a wait period. Also, if you were doing a whole-scale change of the parking code and revamp of it all, that probably is substantially different enough that I think that a reasonable legal interpretation would be that you did not have to wait 4 months on a complete rewrite of the parking code.
Okay. Again, I would encourage you to act on this ordinance tonight as amended. And so, unless there's further discussion, would you like some more clarification, sir?
Thank you, sir. I don't want to belabor this anymore, but I just don't understand why we can't just wait a week and satisfy Councilwoman Hiller's and Councilwoman Ortiz's thought to just look over this for 1 more week. I just don't understand that.
Did she make a motion to do that?
I'll second that.
There's a motion on the floor.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah, there's a motion on the floor. We can either vote yes or no, and then we'll go from there. Okay?
As a point of clarification, I believe Councilwoman Ortiz made a substitute motion to defer it a week.
Okay.
And then that has been seconded, so that would override the current motion on the floor. So you would vote first on Councilwoman Ortiz's motion if you accept her second, and then you would vote on the motion on the floor.
So we have a substitute from Councilwoman Ortiz. Who was the second?
Councilmember Kell.
Okay. Councilman Cap. Okay. All right. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Respectfully, hearing the conversation this evening, I would just throw out, it might be beneficial to send this back to a committee for discussion. That way we can take into consideration even the point that Councilman Duncan made this evening about whether or not staff should have the opportunity to set the rates or whether or not that will go to council for discussion. So I just with respect to what's on the floor, I think that it would be it'd be beneficial to have committee discussion wholesale on everything, as far as what's the amendment that's been brought forward this evening. Just wanted to throw that out. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
I will take my motion back and make a new motion to send it back to committee. I'll make amendment to send it back to committee for discussion.
Okay.
Your second would have to allow you to do that.
Yeah.
So you withdraw.
Okay, your second accepts that. So restate your motion, please, Councilwoman.
To send it to committee for
To
discussion.
send it back to committee.
For further discussion.
Okay.
I believe, if I understand you correctly, you're making a substitute motion to the motion on the floor, which is to pass the ordinance, to instead send the ordinance as on the floor back to committee.
Absolutely.
So we would vote on the substitute motion
Yep.
first to send it back. Everyone clear on that? We'd be voting on the substitute motion made by Councilwoman Ortiz to send this back to committee. And, okay, are we ready to vote?
Okay, so we have, I'm sorry, so we have Ortiz. Then Kell.
Yeah. No, this time it was Marcus Miller for a second, because it's a new substitute motion. Okay.
All right, Ortiz and Miller. Okay. So, and Mayor, and you cannot vote on this, correct? Who was Kell?
The first substitute motion was withdrawn, a new substitute motion was done, and I believe Miller seconded it before Kell could.
Kell voting too. I have out for now.
Mhm.
You can't vote on this, so I've logged you out of the meeting.
Gotcha.
Okay, we are ready to vote. Okay. We have 9 yes, the motion carries. So it will be referred back to committee.
Okay, thank you for the discussion. I agree that surprising the entire council with changes a day or day before probably isn't the most efficient way to gain any kind of confidence in what you're trying to present. We will move on now to the second action item. Madam Clerk.
Okay, B is a resolution introduced by City Manager Dr. Robert Perez to continue free parking through 2025, commencing and resuming metered parking on certain downtown streets in 2026.
Okay. I see a motion and a second from Councilwoman Ortiz, a second from, I see a motion
What are we doing?
from Councilwoman Ortiz.
Okay.
We're working on tech here.
Okay,
There we go.
okay, there we
Okay, now
go.
we're ready to roll. Now you can
This
discuss.
is supposed to help me.
I'm speechless, I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Have you read this yet, City Manager?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So we have a second action item. Councilman Dobler?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think it makes much sense to act on this resolution tonight while the ordinance went to committee, so I'd make a motion to move, to send this to the same committee.
Second by Councilwoman Valdivia Acala.
Come on.
Okay,
I don't know what's going on.
are you ready?
Oh, there it
Brenda?
works.
I'll just
Okay.
second it. That's fine. There we go.
Okay. Accept.
Okay, for the record,
I don't know.
motion from Councilwoman Valdivia Acala.
Uh-huh. And who made the second?
Second by, it was Councilman Dover?
It was.
Yeah,
Then it got rid of it.
Okay, there we go.
okay. Send it to committee.
Right, and he doesn't vote. Okay,
Are you ready to vote?
there we go. Me.
He technically does vote
Oh, he does? Okay. Mayor, you vote.
You do get to vote on this.
This time?
Yep.
Vote no.
We have 10 yes.
Okay. It's back to the committee.
Yes.
Okay, agenda item, action item C. Brenda, when you're ready.
Okay, just a second here. Okay. Okay. All right. C is a resolution introduced by the Public Infrastructure Committee comprised of council members Sylvia Ortiz, David Banks, and Neil Dobler, amending the 2025 to 2034 CIP and the 2025 to 2027 CIB to add project number 701065.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the governing body. Steve Groen, our Director of Public Works, will lead us through this item.
Good evening, Mayor, governing body. We are looking for your permission to amend the CIP and CIB to proceed with replacing our ABL system. This uses to track our snowplow and other equipment, also to keep track of the maintenance needs of our vehicles, and we can also do some mapping and other work with that product.
Okay. Any questions for Steve? I see now. I'm still looking at Councilman Dobler.
Thank you, Mayor. Steve, this replaces a system that we've had for 20-plus years, is that correct?
It is an old system, sir, and a lot of the equipment was malfunctioning this last winter, which caused some mapping issues on our snow fight.
And if I might say, we had a robust discussion about this in the committee, and it will help with transparency during snow removal emergencies. People will be able to see where snow plows are and things like that. So I have the floor. Can I make a motion? I'll make a motion.
It's too late.
No, somebody's already done it. Great. Let's vote.
Yeah. I see a motion from Councilwoman Ortiz and a second by Councilman Banks. No further discussion on here. Okay, you're ready for the vote?
Okay, we have 10 yes, the motion carries.
Thank you. Action item 5D, Madam Clerk.
D is a resolution introduced by the Public Infrastructure Committee comprised of council members Sylvia Ortiz, David Banks, and Neil Dobler, amending the 2025 to 2034 CIP and the 2025 to 2027 CIB to add project number 701071 for
Steve?
road scanning.
Yes, sir, this is something that we try to accomplish every 3 years. We will hire a consultant to go out and scan all of the roadways in town. They'll help us determine our PCI and our road qualities to help feed information to our street asset management plan. We're looking for your support to continue this valuable process.
Any questions for Steve? Deputy Mayor.
Yes, when you get these results, can you pass these along so that way we can, I'm not a big fan of this so far, I think, of the scanning, because I've seen some roads that get scanned that say, oh, hey, we need to do something, and then go look at another road, and I'm like, they're night and day with what needs to be done visually. So it's one of those things I think it'll help us if we can actually go out and see some of these roads firsthand on some of the ones that it's recommended that we do something with.
Absolutely. And once we get our report back, we can both brief the governing body, and I could be more than happy to take any council members out and show them what these reports are indicating on the roads.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Steve?
Just as a point
Deputy
of
City Manager.
Just as a point of clarification, after we get the results, we upload those on our GIS system, which is forward-facing to the public, so that anyone can zoom in on any street and see what the PCI is based on the last inspection.
Thank you. Okay. I see I have a motion from Councilman Banks, second from Councilman Miller. If we're ready for the vote. Yes, we are.
Member Tully? Did you vote?
Well, I tried to.
There you go. Okay, we have 10 yes, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Next, we have action item 5E. Madam Clerk.
E is an ordinance introduced by the City Manager, Dr. Robert Perez, updating anti-discrimination policies in the Topeka Municipal Code, amending and repealing original sections 2105, 010, 040, 050, 255, 040, 330, 440, 470, 480, 920, 020, and 030, and repealing in their entirety sections 220, 120, 330, 420, and 330, 460.
Okay, we have some members of the public signed up to vote. I don't have the list. I don't know where it went. Thank you. It's not on the back. I don't know what happened. Anyway, I got one. Thank you. Before I have the public come forward and speak, I'd like to take my turn first. I want to make sure that I address some concerns that have come to me by email and in person about the city's position with regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think everyone would probably remember that when I took office, it was at my request that I worked then with the previous city manager to develop a department head of diversity, equity, and inclusion. That person did a lot of great work in the city. And I am in no way suggesting by any action that is taken tonight, telling the public that that is no longer a priority for me. The further council members can speak if they wish when they have the opportunity. But this is from me. I am not giving up on that effort. And we will continue to do the work that needs to be done, address the issues that are important to our community, to make sure that as much as possible, and we'll make every effort to make sure it's possible, to include everyone in our decision-making policies. It is something that I have to say I'm not personally happy that we have to make some adjustments, but those are adjustments mandated and adjustments that, whether you want to hear it or not, are a result of elections. Elections are important. They make a difference. And these decrees that have come down have really caused a lot of issues for a lot of people across the country. The city of Topeka knows what its obligations are and will continue to meet those obligations. There is no intent, nor will there be any action that I would take to turn away from diversity, equity, and inclusion. Those are just words. Words that, unless they're backed up with actions, don't mean a lot. And the city of Topeka has taken action and will continue to act as they can to protect the citizens of the city of Topeka. I just want to make that very clear because I think there are a lot of people who are implying certain things or jumping ahead of any discussion about what this particular item on the agenda is tonight. It is an agenda item that the city will legally comply with because part of our obligation is to make sure we have the operational funds and the infrastructure to continue to provide for our citizens. And that is what's tied to a lot of this, is funding. We can't walk away from, I think it's been given the general estimate about the chance of endangering $45 million in funds that would not come to the city, that would allow us to continue to do the right thing. So I just want to make that clear before I give an opportunity to the city manager, who will add a little more detail to that. And then I'm pleased to hear from the public on this particular issue. So thank you for indulging me in my comments. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. So the item that you have before you this evening, as the mayor mentioned, is to ensure that we are in compliance with a number of the executive orders that have been coming down from the federal level. While a lot of those executive orders are currently being challenged, the federal agencies that report and that actually provide us the funding are requiring us to certify that we are in compliance for all the funding that we've discussed, or the approximately $50 million or so that we receive either in federal funding or through grants. And so in addition to the mayor's comments, I just want to share with the public some of the other concerns that we've been receiving, that the changes that are before you this evening, they will not remove our requirements to adhere to other existing federal laws for us to be in compliance with things such as the ADA, Equal Opportunity Employment, Title VII, the Immigration Reform Act, or the Age Discrimination Act. Again, there's other federal laws that we're required to adhere to that this, what you're asked to be considered this evening will not affect. So I just also wanted to state that for the record, for the community, because I do know that a number of the concerns did come in from the community, but I also wanted to explicitly state that what is before you this evening will not prohibit us or keep us from continuing to adhere to those other federal laws that do exist. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Okay. I have 5 people signed up to speak to this item. The first on my list is Mr. Curtis Pitts. Mr. Pitts?
Mr. Mayor, City Council, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I came up today to make a point of clarification. In our lives, we have to all make decisions that are in the best interest of everyone in our community. As a person who obviously became the hot spot when they introduced my comments in the newspaper, I thought it'd be necessary that I come up and clarify my position and other stances I have in relationship to the DEI situation. When the information was brought to me, and being a political scientist, I was very aware that there are so many other issues and areas that are codified in U.S. law that are voted on, Voting Rights Act, Civil Rights Act, that address many of the things that people are concerned about. I am concerned that the fact that when we have national legislation presented to us, that we always see it as a position of challenge or opposition. When in Topeka, we have to see it very differently. We have to see it as an opportunity to do something different, something more magnificent that allows us to bring more people to the table. When you start talking about inclusion, when we start talking about inclusion from Topeka's perspective in this Brown versus the Board of Education city, we have to see who we have at the table, how many people are at the table, and are we having discussions with people we're uncomfortable with. As I travel the country, the most dangerous thing that we're forgetting about the term inclusion means that we have to have people at the table that we don't agree with. That's what makes our nation great. That's what makes us function. That's what makes us the greatest nation in the world, because we have the ability to talk about things. And if the rest of the nation talked about things the way our city council did, I think we'd be less hostile. And I'm concerned because when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I also want to talk about the concept of where is our race relations in our city. Are we continuing to be the flagship for positive change in our race relations? When I talk about pressure coming in from Washington, D.C., again, I see that as an opportunity to do something cutting edge. And I do understand the bottom line is the bottom line. When I hear people talk about our president, I say I'm a little bit different because of my faith. We're always taught to vote and pray for all of our elected officials. We don't get to just slam them whether we like them or not. We have to pray and get a mindset that says we want them to do the best job for everyone. How does it affect us on the grassroots level? Let's talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. The first concept people think about welfare, they think about it's a minority program. The truth of it is the term welfare came from the welfare of the nation. That's when they took people's land and they gave it to the railroads. And so what we have to do now in our community is, if they're going to make the changes, how do we get to the table and bring us back as a family? The elders in the community are concerned about where we at as a family, where we at as a community. Are we building relationships? Are we under attack, or we're not communicating? And this is one of the few places, at the 1 minute mark, where you can see wealthy people, people in positions of power, walking the streets where you can stop and talk to them. DEI is important to a tremendous population in our nation, some good people. But it's not the beginning and the end if we make changes. But the only change I want to see that we do as a family is how do we bring each other together, with or without federal money, with or without the city's dollar behind it, with or without the vote behind it. When do we as citizens say we have to make changes and start working together and build a family? Because I can take you to East and Central Topeka and South Topeka right now, where they're more talking about what are we going to eat, how do we keep our lights on, how do we get graduated, how do we stop the violence, how do we make sure our kids are in the best possible school district. And I thank you all for this opportunity to come. I didn't come here to say take a side for or against, but I came to say that we have to have a mindset of being cutting edge. If we're challenged to do something different, let's create a table so big and magnificent that everyone says, why didn't we think of that? That's the Topeka way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas Muser.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, the council, Mr. Mayor. I only found out about this just very recently. I didn't have the time to look to see what the exact changes have been proposed. But, so I'm just speaking in general here in support of DEI. I don't think I need to tell you that if you looked at any statistic regarding the welfare of minorities versus whites, that minorities suffer in all of them, whether it be health disparities, economic disparities. The one that was most striking, I looked up before I came here, was wealth, that I think it was 87% of all wealth in this nation is held by white families. Obviously, white families do not make up 87% of this country. So that is just amazing. Sadly, racial discrimination still exists. I wish it weren't so. Obviously, this country has made tremendous strides since I was a little kid. Jim Crow was alive and well in the 50s. That's when I was born, in the 50s. I remember in 1968, I believe, watching a football game, these two commentators talking openly about whether black quarterbacks were, that blacks were smart enough to be a quarterback in the NFL. It's just, I thought it was incredible at the time. I still think that's just amazing that that happened. So anyway, I would suggest that instead of just complying with these mandates coming from the federal government, and I think most of us know that this isn't coming from a good place. The people in the whole high office right now, this is coming from a position of racial animus, I would suggest. There's plenty of evidence to suggest that some of the people now in this administration are very much in the fold of racist. I could back this up with a lot of statistics, but I won't bother. So instead of complying, I might suggest that maybe you could join with other communities, other cities, and maybe fight some of this. I'm quite certain there are other municipalities that would be happy to climb on board with a fight to oppose this. We've seen people that have opposed some of the things that the administration is that 1 minute? Okay, yeah. Okay. Some of them, this administration has proposed and have fought and have won time and time again in the courts. And I think this might be another thing that we might be able to win. Although I can't say that's for certain, of course, because we have a very conservative Supreme Court right now. But it is possible, and I would strongly recommend that you do look, at least, into that avenue. I guess that's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Danielle Twimlow.
Thank you. I think we need a civics lesson tonight. I have my pocket constitution that stays in my wallet, and I'm happy to bring you a copy. I know I've brought one for some of you before. I also get pretty offended when I continue to hear, every time we hear opposition to anything that's coming before this council, that the community is just not informed. And I hear that a lot. It's become a pretty common thing when it's really quite opposite. We're pretty well informed about what's happening here. And I want to be clear that removing any anti-discrimination protections isn't compliance. It's obedience. It invites legal risk, it undermines public trust, and it sends the wrong message about who belongs here. It is stated that these changes are to certify requirements for executive orders, which attempt to curtail diversity, equity, inclusion programs in federally funded entities. But these executive orders have already been challenged and partially blocked in courts. There's injunctions that a federal judge has issued in March against the Department of Labor, blocking rules that would penalize contractors for vague violations of DEI guidelines. The court found that the language unconstitutionally vague and likely in violation of the First Amendment. There was another executive order a law firm struck down where a federal judge ruled that another of Trump's executive actions targeting these DEI programs was unconstitutional, calling it a misuse of executive authority, an attempt to stifle protected speech. So this brings me to my fundamental question. If the executive orders are too vague to be lawfully enforced at the federal level, how did this city decide which language or practice to remove? Which definition of DEI are we using? What processes were followed? Because the courts have made it clear you cannot comply with something that has no legal clarity. Worse, using these flawed executive orders as justification for rolling back equity practices is not just legally questionable, it's factually wrong. Federally funding is not controlled by the president through executive order. Under Article 1, Section 9 of the U.S. Constitution, only Congress has the power to appropriate federal funds. Executive overreach has already been rebuked in cases like City v. Chicago and Sessions and San Francisco v. Trump, where attempts to punish non-compliant jurisdictions were declared unconstitutional. Beyond the legal flaws, I urge you to consider the impact that this has on our community. It signals to marginalized residents, people of color, LGBTQ residents, immigrants, and people with disabilities that their protection is no longer a city priority, whether it is stated. When it is not put and codified into practice in law, we have seen time and time again where it is violated. It creates a hostile climate for businesses, educators, and healthcare providers who are working in good faith to promote equity. It increases our vulnerability to lawsuits, employee complaints, and civil rights. So we pass this today, and the federal courts are stating that this is an unlawful action of an executive order. We, as a city, are liable for a lawsuit that federal courts are likely going to uphold because this is not law. So I urge you to not make a hasty decision, to reconsider, considering we have no idea whether HUD or any of these other places will actually continue in the first place. And we need to be looking at this more carefully because it is definitely an overreach from what even these executive orders are issuing. So I urge you to take a stance back and a closer look. Thank you.
Thank you. Vernon Carvo. Typo.
Quickly they forget. Now that you see me, you remember.
I am. Now that I see you, yes.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Vernon Jarbo, and I sat in Amanda's chair for 5 years. Some of you may remember. I can tell you that this was a different body then. 8 white guys. And look at you now. That's because diversity, equity, inclusion are words that, yes, they are, Mayor, just words, but they matter. And I'm with you with everything that you said, Mayor. When I heard that this ordinance was here, and I actually went out and read the changes, and I saw the language that it also removed language with respect to recognition of gender identity and sexual orientation, as well as the DEI words, I'm thinking, oh my God, where are we going here? You know, I was here, I sat in that chair, and I was reviled by many citizens of this city for my position as city attorney because I stood in the way of ordinances with respect to picketing. And people were mad at me. Amanda, I don't envy your position today with these issues. And I've admired her work from afar as I've watched this. I'm here tonight. This is the very first time I've ever been to this podium for something I cared about. I'm not here because I'm representing somebody. I'm not representing my law firm. Probably may vote me out tomorrow. I don't know. I would urge you to vote against this, to give it more study. The other speakers have spoken well about why that's true. I cannot imagine that our Constitution supports this executive order or any of the others. And as far as I can tell, I don't believe the administration at the federal level has won any of the battles they've fought over these executive orders. Maybe they have, maybe I've missed some, but I don't think so. The reality is, this is just a bad idea. Diversity, why is that a bad thing? Look at you. You're actually a diverse group now that you weren't 30 years ago when I was here. Equity, what's wrong with that? Fairness, isn't that a basic thing for Americans to feel is fairness? Isn't that why we didn't want a monarch who would decide things arbitrarily? I think this is a really dangerous path to go down where we just acquiesce because somebody with apparent power, more apparent power than real power, we start giving in. I think the suggestions that you've heard about fighting, I think are well placed. Now, I am not a constitutional scholar. I'm a dirt lawyer. But the ownership of land and dirt is fundamental to Americans, I believe. And that's why I equate it to a constitutional thing of real importance. So, I certainly have not done the homework. I'm sure Amanda has done some, but I think it's a really bad idea to head down this path. So I want to read something to you. I'll tell you where it came from. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me. And there was no one left to speak for me. It's on the wall at the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. In my opinion, that's where we're headed with this, and it's a really bad idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Apologize for not recognizing you, Vernon. Ms. Joe Charest.
Good, oops, forgot I'm short. I am going to read to you what I sent to everybody yesterday via email. I am speaking to you within my role as chair of the ADA Council within the city of Topeka. I have read the proposed changes to the ordinance. The section on policy is concerning where it says it is the policy of the city to provide equal opportunity when employing individuals and not to discriminate against any individual based on his or her age, color, disability, religion, sex, veteran status, or any other factor protected by law, protected class. This shall apply to all personnel actions and procedures, including but not limited to recruitment, hiring, training, transfer, promotion, compensation, and other benefits. The section general objectives, item 2, is stricken out. It says, develop special training programs to qualify persons within a protected class for beginning level positions and for advancement. By the first part of this change, people with disabilities are a protected class. But then in the stricken out section, protected class is not a consideration. So from an ADA standpoint, individuals with disabilities require accommodations in the workplace. There needs to be someone to be trained on how to implement those needed accommodations for disabled workers. My question is, how is that training going to be affected if the city isn't allowed to develop the special training programs that are needed for this? Let's take web accessibility for a new employee who needs visual aids to do their job for a great example of this. Will a current trainer not have the tools to know that the new employee may need a screen reader and where to get one and how to install it and use it? Will a trainer not be required to know how to insert alt text into an image to make images more accessible for a visually impaired worker? Now let's take a look at brick and mortar businesses. Will a business not be able to be trained on ADA requirements needed for a brick and mortar business? Will contractors not have to be trained on how to install and construct ADA accessible features into a brick and mortar building and outlying infrastructure? These are things we need to be looking at when it comes to changing the DEI ordinance as it is written versus the proposed changes. When I talked to Dr. Perez at the city manager candidates event at Hotel Topeka, I asked him if he would work with the city to ensure that the needs of disabled Topekans are being met. He assured me he would. The other question I have is, what is the breakdown of the funding that is in jeopardy of the city losing? I believe the RAISE grant is in a holding pattern due to disruptions in the agency that the grant is housed in. Is that part of the funding that the city would be losing out on? The public needs to know what the breakdown is of the funding we are looking at losing. The recent news story that KSNT did on this did not specify any of this. They only provided the document on the proposed changes. In addition, the Department of Justice has stricken 5 items off of the ADA.gov website in regards to businesses and practices to implement ADA changes in their everyday practices. So thank you, and I strongly urge this body to reconsider all of this.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so the body and the audience indulged my opportunity to speak. We've given and received good comments from the public. I want to make sure that anybody in the governing body, if they wish to speak to this particular item, has that opportunity. So we'll start first with Deputy Mayor Kell and then Councilman Duncan.
I've composed something that's quite lengthy, and I'm going to try to make sure I go through this slowly. My heart rate's already up there, my palms are sweaty, so. DEI can be a great thing when done correctly. It allows fair hiring and advancement opportunities to persons who are deprived of fair opportunity due to their age, gender, race, disability, religion, or sexual preference. DEI to me is about fairness to all and equal opportunity for everyone. Again, I say all and everyone. For years, women, people of color, those in the LGBTQ plus community, and people with disabilities have been suppressed in many facets of their lives. We became the United States in 1776 and the state of Kansas in 1861. African American men weren't allowed to vote until 1870. Women didn't have the right to vote in Kansas until 1912. African American women didn't have the right to vote until 1920. Women could not start divorce proceedings until 1937, and then it was for very few reasons, leaving many trapped in abusive relationships. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, this landmark legislation prohibited discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin, including in educational institutions. Individuals with Disabilities Act didn't happen until 1975. This law required that schools make necessary accommodations and services to support with a range of disabilities, including learning disabilities, developmental disabilities, and physical disabilities. The American with Disabilities Act is a U.S. civil rights law enacted in 1990. So now we're getting into my lifetime when things have changed. That prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities in all areas of public life and ensures that people with disabilities have equal opportunities in employment, public services, and public accommodation, among other areas. Don't Ask, Don't Tell was an official United States military service for military service of homosexual people, instituted in December 1993 and was in effect until September 2011. When it repealed with great opposition. Once repealed, LGBTQ plus service members, past and present, could be open with about who they were and who they loved. On January 2013, Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta removed the military's ban on women serving in combat. Same-sex marriage only became legal and recognized in Kansas just 10 years ago, in June 2015, so 10 years ago. And just recently, the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act protects pregnant and postpartum workers from discrimination and ensures that they have the right to reasonable accommodations at work, just took effect only 2 years ago. And it was in committee and up for vote for over 10 years. All were overdue landmarks in our history to equality. But all of those instances, people still face resistance after being afforded those rights. A government entity such as the City of Topeka should reflect that of the citizens in every way. People say we use DEI hiring process for the police and fire the last couple of years. I had zero expectations for DEI when we had so many openings that we were just taking every qualified applicant we could regardless of DEI. We just happened to have a very diverse group applying for those positions. But over the last decade, the City of Topeka has faced several lawsuits over substantiated DEI violations, especially in our police and fire departments. Here's my issue with doing this. Where does it stop? What's the next thing that has to change with the threat of pulling funding? What else do we have to do? Excuse me. What else will we have to change to make one man happy? Things have been done and being done that are that of a dictator, changing names of things back to the racist history, but spinning it with a new twist. So we have to change the name of our newly named water department building after Jack Alexander because he thinks it's DEI. Threatening to activate military and National Guard to take over cities and municipalities that don't conform to his way. We're sitting in an executive order which allows the government contractors to be sexist, racist, and bigoted in their business and in their practices. Deporting people without due process and threatening to send U.S. citizens to foreign prisons. These men and women may have not done right, but they do have legal and human rights. Has cut funding for medical and social services, causing measles, whooping cough, and hepatitis outbreaks. They have also targeted Medicaid, which affects disabled children and adults, and programs like Meals on Wheels that deliver meals to individuals at home who are unable to prepare their own meals due to age, illness, or disability. Designated English as the official language and requiring certain jobs to be proficient in English, even though we are a melting pot of persons from around the globe who are here lawfully and justly. We have several U.S. citizens who do not speak English or speak it proficiently. Topeka is the cornerstone of DEI, as we are the home of Brown v. Ward, which ruled racial segregation is illegal. And by allowing racial, gender, religious, and sexual preferences to be something we ignore and have zero protections, for me, is unconstitutional and illegal. Topeka is nothing to our current federal administration and has been proven when nobody was allotted for the delegation from the USS Topeka to join us yesterday. But there's a full military parade on his birthday. I'm not saying we give someone a promotion or hire someone solely based on their age, gender, race, religious beliefs, disabled or sexual preference, but we allow equal opportunities and fair practices to all. Let me say that again, all. I'm a U.S. military veteran, and when I signed up to protect the rights of all based off the Constitution that we had sworn an oath to several times in my life. I served with all races, genders, several nationalities, all sexual preferences, and all I saw was sailors, Marines, soldiers, and air persons. There are those who say DEI means didn't earn it. But to me, DEI is allowing everyone who earned it a chance at getting it. Let me say that again, everyone. DEI is different from affirmative action. Many Americans, such as women, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, disabled Americans, and people of the LGBTQ plus community are currently being targeted, and I will not take part of it. This may cost me my job. This may cause me to lose a seat in November. But I cannot and will not support something that is being forced on us that could devolve into racism, sexism, ageism, bigotry, and hatred. I will not take steps back in equality. I say again, what's next? What will we be forced to change in the future? Thank you.
I have Councilman Duncan and then Councilman Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, there's several reasons this is before us, but the biggest one is $45 million, right? Let's just be honest about that. Contrary to what the internet likes to say, that's not $45 million we're spending on DEI. It's $45 million going to infrastructure, going to housing, real money that impacts real citizens in this community every day, and it's scary. There are cities in this state who have already lost some of those funds, and that's not okay. And I want to tell legal, you did your job in providing us what you needed to do. That is your job. You've tried to provide us changes that, you know, help our concerns and sort of go within the spirit of what the mayor addressed earlier, but also protect those dollars. My issue is I'm a local control guy, right? It's what I do in my day job on behalf of the cities of this state. It's what I do as a representative of the citizens here in Topeka. Not only that, Kansas is a local control state. We put it in the Kansas Constitution, constitutional home rule for a reason. These decisions are supposed to be made with conversations with our citizens, not by bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. who can't find us on a map. And so there are some things in here I can live with. I understand why there's cleanup language. And there's other things that, from my perspective, are just too broad, and I'm not ready to acquiesce just yet. What I would like to do, Mayor, is make a motion to refer this to the Policy and Finance Committee, to sit down with legal, go through and see if we can come up with something that's more representative of what we think can serve the purposes of us and the citizens of Topeka.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Under discussion, I still have Councilman Miller and then Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala who wish to make comment.
Thank you, Mayor. I thought long and hard about what I was going to say tonight regarding this item that we have in front of us. I will say this. I will keep my comments brief because I will speak with my vote and actions like what the community voted for me to do. I love the energy of former City Attorney Carvo. Is that how you say that?
No, Jarbo.
Jarbo. Jarbo. Okay.
With a
My
K.
apologies.
That's how I know.
Silent K.
But I do not agree with him that this council looks like this now because of DEI. We look like this now because the community knows and supports people who love their city, are decisive, and bring something to the table. Now, I'm not the engineer that council members Hofer and Dobler are, the political strategist like Councilmember Duncan, have the frontline experience of Councilmember Banks and Mayor Padilla, or the nuts and bolts ability to get in the weeds like Councilmember Hiller. But what I am is what Ruby Banks and Veronica Banks raised me to be. And excuse my language, that ain't no bitch. So I will not be supporting wholesale changes. I agree with that we need to figure out a way to continue to do the work while letting the community know that we stand strong on our morals and what we plan to do every single day. And I will stop right there.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Valdivia-Acala.
Thank you, Mayor. Just going to step aside from the B word being used, but at any rate, I think it's an excellent idea for this to move to the committee where it can have really thoughtful, engaged dialogue that the citizens can be a part of, I would hope, by being in attendance, by watching it online, by us looking and breaking this down, because we have received such an onslaught of information, and many of us, I would grant to say all of us, are not constitutional experts. And so it's very important that we understand exactly what it means and what it does not mean. And as you and I have talked, Councilman Duncan, you know, about what is happening in the country as a whole to see if we can get some markers. We understand that legal has, you know, done their due diligence, but I believe that by moving it to the committee, it's now time for us really to do our due diligence with this. As a Chicana woman whose mother was born in Mexico, whose families all came from Mexico, I find it interesting that people will say, you know, you don't understand the importance of DEI, or do you understand the importance of DEI, or why would you even be floating, you know, possibly voting a way that would strip it? And, you know, my answer to that is that initially, until I really started getting into the trenches with it and considering both sides of it, initially it was with fear. It was fear about the funding that could be stripped from us, knowing that we are having budget deficits, knowing that there is so much yet to be done within this city, and it was fear of what that would do and how services could be impacted, how infrastructure could be impacted. And as a Chicana woman, first generation, who was stripped of her language, the native Spanish and indigenous by conquest in Mexico, and then the assimilation here, I take offense to people not seeing that this brown skin has had some of that experience, so I don't go into any of this lightly. But I think that the best thing to do is to study it closely, to not get alarmist about it, because I will admit I was alarmist at first because I did not want to hurt the city and the residents any more than we're already hurting. So I think that by taking it into this realm of committee, I plan on being there however long this is going to last while you guys, you know, talk about it in committee. Hope to add, you know, some feedback as well, and then come back with a more thoughtful nature. I came out of the womb basically fighting, and I have my whole life. That's just the way I grew up. It's the way I had to be. But I am not going to fight for fight's sake if it looks like it is something that is going to hurt people in a way that we will not be able to rebound from. If we can, to me, if I can find that path where I can still do that fight and say no to something that is completely egregious to me, these executive orders, and feel like it will be safe for everyone, then I will do so. But understand that when I make a decision, I make a decision from the experience that I have lived, that my family has lived, my culture has lived, my community has lived, and that the larger community of Topeka that I live in. So thank you for the suggestion and the move on this, Councilman Duncan. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I would like to say that I support taking this back to committee. Secondly, I want to say to our community, I moved here from Chicago. My parents and my grandparents are from Greenwood, Mississippi. And having opportunities to visit the South and me growing up and coming from the North, things were very, very different. And I chose to live in this city because no matter what your skin color was or is, we were allowed to progress in any way that we were willing to work for. And now, as I walk around this city as a council person, as what we would call a community person, I've seen an increase in the boldness of people lighter skinned than myself since this administration has been in power. Some of them will say, hey, you're one of my best friends. But when I express my thoughts about how our country is being ran, I lose those friends. Or maybe they weren't friends in the beginning. But I would encourage anybody in our community to think very deeply about DEI. Because not only are we allowed through that process to be who we are, think about making changes to people that are in a less position than we are. When I go home to visit my family in Chicago, they talk about how what they call podunk that we are. And what I tell them is, hey, if I have an issue in Topeka, somebody stops to help me. If you have an issue in Chicago, somebody stops to rob you. Or do something even worse. We have to think about what's before us to now. We truly have a person that's no less than a dictator in our higher office. That's the only way that you can put it. And if we really did the numbers and we looked at all the millionaires, billionaires that are in the top level of those administrative positions right now, we would realize we mean nothing to them. My few $1,000s, your $1 million doesn't mean anything. We are being inundated with ideas that's not of ourselves. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Hiller, then Councilwoman Ortiz.
I'll keep mine short. I really appreciate what everyone has said. We've talked about this really only once before, I think, but it's just so encouraging to hear the strong support for community and doing the right thing. A statement that I prepared was just to say I'm proud of the long history of Kansas and Topeka as places where all were welcome, free, and recognized not only for who they are, but their stories and their potential. I'm proud of and active with individuals and groups, including this council and our staff and leadership and our citizens, who ascribe to those principles and practice them and work to grow and sustain equality and fairness in everything we do. In terms of what to do with these words, I really appreciate Amanda's work and all the networking that she's done, and that the citizens who have written to us or called us and those of us on the council as well have done to try and wrap our heads around this. One of the things I hope, and Amanda and I talked about a little bit, I don't know if we can do it, but if we could, instead of just being reactive and crossing words out, if we could look at kind of flipping the challenge we've been given, and I think Curtis represented that well earlier, and come up with something affirmative about what we believe in and that we won't move from that and use that throughout every place that we're being challenged, we could perhaps accommodate the challenges that have come to us from outside, but also represent strongly what we all believe in. And perhaps it could be a role model for others, but at least for us. Thank you.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I heard on the news one time, it said the richest person in the world is making decisions for the poorest people in the world. And that's very, very true. And it's very, very sad. I agree with Councilman Banks. People are bolder now. And I think I can truly say that nobody on this council wants to go backwards. Nobody. If I'm wrong, correct me, but I can truly say that. I agree with Christina that we understand. You know, I get that all the time. I'm not white, so I don't understand, and I'm not black, so I don't understand. You know, but one thing you got to understand is I'm not white enough to be with the whites, and I'm not black enough to be with the blacks, so I'm in the middle. So, you know what? I have to go with my people, but we do understand. You know, we do understand that. That doesn't mean that we don't agree with this side or that side, because we do understand. When I think about, you know, when I thought about all this, and I appreciate sending this to committee, because it really needs to go to committee. When I think about the bottoms, then people are proud to say they are from the bottoms. Right. And I used to ask my dad, I said, Dad, what in the world do you mean the bottoms? And then he said, Mudtown. And I said, well, what the heck is Mudtown in the bottoms? And why would you be so proud to be there? Because they had their own stores, they had their own pharmacy, they had neighbors that when you needed something, they came and they delivered. You know what? I think about Harold's Price Package, and I think about him who had his little hamburger joint down there. And you know, he was down there. I got a lot of free stuff from Harold, I'll tell you that. And you know what? Then he moved on 6th Street. He wanted to be in the mix of the minorities when I look at Topeka. I've been born and raised here. I love it here. So for all the people, and this ain't no campaign spill, this is who I am. For all the people that say, oh, they don't understand, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. We shouldn't have to sit here and talk about it, but we also, Christina's right, we also have to look at the funding for our people that's going to hurt our low to moderate income people, that's already hurting our mentally ill, that's already hurting the education, the kids that are on the spectrum that ain't going to have an IEP. What the heck? What the heck are they going to do? How are they going to be valuable citizens in this city? And that's up to us. That's up to us to continue to keep those kids, because you know what? We have people that won't step forward, that have been all the way through college with IEPs, that are successful attorneys, that are successful human beings because of those IEPs. And so when I look at our president, and I do pray for him, because that's all I can do is pray for him. When I look at him, he's trying to make us go lower and lower and lower. I don't think anybody here, and I've read a lot of nasty emails, I've gotten some nasty calls. I don't think that's our intention to go backwards. I don't think that. And if I'm wrong, it'll show up in the vote. But I don't think that is wrong at all. So we're just trying to figure what we can and what we can't do. And you know what? Some of our low to moderate income sides, they're feeling that pinch already. They're scared. You know what? My people are scared to even come out for fear that they're going to be sent back. Sent back. We had a young man that was killed in Oakland. God bless his heart. And his family was afraid to come out, to go where he was last killed, because they're afraid that ICE is coming through at any particular time. We got kids at the school that are told, we can protect you as long as you're on the school grounds, but as soon as you leave those doors, there's nothing we can do for you. That's terrible. It's terrible. So, to everyone out there, I just want to say this. We know we have some decisions to make, and we're going to try to make the right ones, and with good intentions, but there's going to be some harsh ones as well. And I know this. Every vote, we please somebody and we don't please anybody. But we're feeling the pain too. We're feeling the pain. You know, when my grandson can come home and say his friends' parents are worried about being sent back, what's going to happen to him? That's terrible. So we're feeling the pain too. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. We have 3 more council people who wish to speak on the item. I got an updated list of citizens who wish to speak, and on my updated list showed Mr. Lazone Grays. I think he's still in here. Okay, see, Lazone, I'm not going to call you up right now. I'm going to go ahead and acknowledge the council members, and then after that, I'll give you that opportunity. It wasn't intentional. It was just on a different list. Okay? So the next person I have up is Councilman Miller.
I'm actually looking forward, thank you, Mayor, I'm actually looking forward to Mr. Lazone coming to talk, but I just want to let Councilwoman Ortiz know that you're welcome to my cookout if you want to come over. Calm down, cut it out.
Okay? Councilman Dobler and then Councilwoman Hofer.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't take very long here. I think we all fell into a little bit of the trap when we first started discussing this, the fear trap, I'll call it. And I'm sure there's a lot of folks in the country that can relate to that. I like this idea of stepping back, not doing something that we know is not right at this point. We're on the knife's edge, $45 million to this body with a general fund of $130 million. It's a big chunk, so we've got to be very, very careful. But it does need a lot of thought. I like the idea of taking a little bit more time as well and seeing what happens with other cities, lawsuits. There's a lot of things that can happen. So that feels right. We have to look at it. We've got no choice but to look at this. But stepping back and taking our time makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman?
This is not my strong suit, but as I sat here and I thought about the 3 words, diversity, equity, and inclusivity, they're 3 great words. They do a lot of good, and someone has made them dirty words, and I resent that. Every day we keep hearing things that are changing. It is changing so quickly. And we probably did a little bit of knee-jerk reaction, but it's warranted because we can't afford to have. We have a list of some of the grants and funds that we are getting, and we need them. So I appreciate the legal department going through and finding everything that could possibly be tagged, which we had to do. We had to know the full extent of what the damage could be financially and legally. I want to be as pragmatic as possible to do the right thing, and that includes trying to avoid any kind of funds being pulled from us, because right now they're saying funds are on hold for a lot of places. We don't know when, no one knows when they'll get them. And have CDBG funds pulled from a neighborhood for a couple of years, that's damaging to them. So I want to do the best we can, and frankly, I don't want to have to come up with the legal fees to defend it and take that money from somebody else. I want us to be methodical how we go through everything that we have targeted in this ordinance, and I'll invite everyone to come to Policy and Finance and listen to us as we go through just about line by line and determine what we can do, no problems, that has to be updated, what is something that can wait, and something that we really need to deliberate now. So hopefully that will be coming to a soon meeting. And I hate to have the city get so split on what we should do. We want to do the right thing for all of our employees and our citizens. That's good enough.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, thank you, Lizone, for being patient. If you approach the podium now.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. Thank you for the time, and thank you for catching up with me. I would have felt bad if I wouldn't have spoke. I'm going to sort of be brief. Probably for years, before we had our first city manager, if you go to page 10 of your document of the changes, it really covers the Program Review Committee that was about reviewing and evaluating the city's minority diverse business utilization. From before this first city manager came, I would come here to the city council and ask you to enforce this part of your city code because it wasn't being done. There were no goals being set. There was no quarterly report. There was no annual report or any discussion within the annual budget, which was stated in your code. All I wanted to do was to get the city council to enforce who your city staff was to make sure that these got done. Because it brings in a lot of good information on the utilization. From the very first city manager, this didn't get accomplished until City Manager Trout and subsequent Wade came through. That was over a decade just to get the city to abide and enforce their own code. And so that hasn't been very long. You know, and now all of this is stricken from your code. And so whether it stays or whether it doesn't, there's nothing that I can say to that, but I think it's sort of maybe a lesson, you know, for those businesses, you know, that may not have been pursued, that they had a chance and a better opportunity, because once Mr. City Manager Trout and Mr. Wade made changes, and then there was a new director within contracts procurement, Leah Bowling. I think that they have done an excellent job of taking that and being intentional in trying to do what they can about, you know, increasing the diverse vendors who do business with the city. Everybody pays money into the city, but when you do look at the city contracting, you can see the disparities on who gets the contracts, who gets the work, who's making the bulks of the money. And not to blame anybody, I'm just trying to find solutions to where we can find some equitable parity off into this. And so I don't expect, I'm glad that's going to be sent back to a committee to discuss. I really don't expect some things to change. I think that there's certain wording, disadvantaged, underrepresented, underserved, you know, that's going to be put a lot of things into jeopardy. But what this change does, it tells the city council what they cannot do or what they don't have to do. They don't have to have a review committee. They don't have to issue any quarterly reports or anything. But what it doesn't do is take away the intentionality of the people who's running your divisions. Why not capture the data? You've been doing it anyway for the diverse businesses. The software is there. That doesn't have to change. You don't have to mandate a quarterly or annual report, but that doesn't mean that that department can't put one together and give it to you. You can't mandate that there are goals that are being set, but that doesn't mean that they can't set goals and come and justify why those goals are based off of the data and things that they're being captured anyway. So I don't know at the end of what you're going to do, but even if you stripped all of this out of there, again, it doesn't take away intentionality. If you always have a director in a procurement and division that's really good like the one that you have now, they'll probably do the same because this is the information that's of importance. And so that's really what I just wanted to express, that there are businesses who should have got on because a law on the books today could be gone tomorrow. And so when this opportunity opened up and businesses don't go to the events that they were putting on, they need to start coming to them because these are the type of events and opportunities that will disappear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor to send this to Policy and Finance Committee for further review and discussion. No further comment. I think we're ready for the vote. Christina. I don't know why, but mine keeps pulling your name up there. Ghosting me. Okay, ready to vote now? To send it to committee.
Okay, we have 10 yes, the motion carries.
Okay.
Mayor, just a point of information.
Councilman Duncan.
Because I know we're all going to get asked this. Policy and Finance has a meeting already scheduled for next week. This will not be on that agenda. I will get with staff because they probably need more than one lawyer there, and a few other staff members are going to want to be at that meeting. So I will get with staff and we will get that scheduled and make sure there's public notice and all that. But just so everyone knows, don't look for it on the meeting next week. It won't be on that agenda. So I just want to put that out there now. So thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank the public for their input on this. I think it was honest and helpful. I also want to commend my fellow council members for stepping forward and being open and brave with their comments. So I think it's important that the community who watches these council meetings hears what was said tonight. So for those who maybe didn't get a chance to attend, I would encourage others who, before they make comment in the public, take the time to look this meeting up, review the comments that were made, inform yourselves about where the council stands, and I welcome the support at every effort in this piece. So thank you all. We'll move on now to action item F, Madam Clerk.
F is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Dr. Robert Perez for the purpose of establishing funding for increased costs for the development project at 32nd Terrace and Topeka Boulevard, and an amended and restated development agreement for implementation of the Southwest 32nd Terrace and Southwest Topeka Boulevard Community Improvement District and Tax Increment Finance District redevelopment project plan between the City of Topeka, Kansas and 911 Walnut, Inc.
Okay, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the governing body. Rhiannon Freeman, our Director of Planning and Development, will lead us through this item.
Rhiannon.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. All right, good evening. So 911 Walnut, this is also known as 32nd and Topeka Boulevard, if you recall. It's been a little bit since we looked at this development agreement that was previously approved, so I'm going to run through some quick slides here just to help refresh everybody's memory. So back in June 13th of 2023, the CID district was established and the development agreement was entered into with a total development cost of $15.1 million being associated with the project. Some amendments that have been requested by the developer is an increase that reflects an increase of construction costs from $15.1 million to $16.6 million. This increase is directly impacted by improvements to address traffic, site access, and then circulation as well. So the developer has proposed an option here to use a home rule ordinance to utilize $600,000 of citywide half-cent sales tax to address the improvements to Topeka Boulevard, and then $300,000 of general City of Topeka sales tax to address the improvements that are needed outside of the existing boulevard alignment. And as you'll know, the difference between that is the difference between what the half-cent sales tax can be used for, existing infrastructure, and then the general sales tax to address the new additions that will be put in place as well. So the restated development agreement has a maximum reimbursement amount that is set to right around $4.4 million plus reimbursable interest. And then this slide just kind of takes and breaks down. So what you'll see here is this goes through all of the schedule of the costs between acquisition, site prep, soft costs, vertical construction, and then it shows what costs are applicable for TIF reimbursement, CID reimbursement, and then it also breaks out the cost that can be applied through the city sales tax with the existing roads, and then also the general sales tax. So the city sales tax column with existing roads is that half-cent sales tax. So you'll see that these numbers align to the maximum reimbursement amount of the $4.4 million. So one of the things that we required the developer to provide was a breakdown that showed us exactly what elements of the project would fall into each of the funding buckets, just to make sure that we were very careful to ensure that they were being allocated in the appropriate way. So this exhibit H2 that's in the restated development agreement also breaks this down for you, is in your packet. The eligible expenses do have capped maximum amounts. $600,000 is the cap for the citywide half-cent sales tax and $300,000 for the general tax. Some additional notes that we thought would be important to point out is that under the STR terms that are in the development agreement, it clearly states that the citywide half-cent sales tax is set to sunset in October of 2029. And without a vote to approve the extension of these funds, they will not be guaranteed to the developer past its expiration, should they no longer be available. All right. Well, with that, I would stand for any questions.
Questions for Rhiannon? Councilman Duncan.
And just to clarify,
Sure.
the sales tax we're talking about is only sales tax collected on site, right? I just think that's important for people to know. This isn't
Sure.
sales tax collected outside of anyone who wants to shop at those locations. So.
Sure, that's correct. Yeah, it's only a percentage of the sales tax that the district collects itself.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councilman Dobler?
Thank you, Mayor. And just to follow up on Councilman Duncan's question, how much sales tax was collected before these developments occurred in that specific area?
In that specific area? None.
Okay, thank you. So this is proceeds that are sales tax proceeds that are going to be here only because of the two developments, the two restrooms. Thank you very much.
City Attorney.
I just wanted to add a brief point of clarification because this is something a little different than what you've seen, just to make sure that it's explained. Oftentimes we do this type of transaction through the original CID. However, because the CID has developed and now it's separate and out and all kinds of different property owners and you have different rules, it was much more complicated to amend the CID to allow this than to do it through a home rule ordinance. The result is the same, but that's why it's being done through a home rule ordinance rather than through an amendment of the CID, which means the mayor does not vote versus on a CID he would vote. So slight differences, but the end result is the same.
Thank you, ma'am. Deputy Mayor.
So this is my district. And correction, there was actually an establishment there. There was a bar that was there that brought in some money, but it wasn't bringing in what's going to be brought in with this here. But I have an issue with you come to the table asking for something, and then when things change, you want to come and ask for more. This is $900,000 that we can use in the city that we desperately need. And so to, take money that would be coming to us and help a developer that's probably going to make $1 million this year just off each of those locations, and now they want more money. And it's kind of aggravating from my side of things, especially because I represent such a low-income side of town and people that deal with issues, and I'm grateful that they came to our side of town. I'm grateful that they are doing things that bring jobs, bring more options to, but it's just, I'm not a person that likes someone to come for a second bite of the apple, especially when we're facing what we're facing right now, and you round it up, it's $1 million. And that's $1 million that could be used a lot of places in Topeka.
Councilman Duncan.
Thank you, Mayor. I voted against the CID. right? And I won't go into my history of why I don't like CIDs one more time. You've heard that rant before. But my point is, I can support this because we ask developers when they come to the table all the time to be flexible. We have to give them the same respect when things change. And in this case, things changed. And they were things that partially had been foreseen by staff, partially hadn't, partially, I mean, there was a lot of moving parts to this. Things changed. So I can support this to that point. If we're going to continue to ask developers to be flexible with us, there are times we have got to also be flexible with them. So as much as I didn't even like the original CID, it's in place, and I want this to all succeed, and this gets that done without us having to add more taxes to folks. It still just applies to those locations. So thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Dobler.
Thank you, Mayor. Quick follow-up comment, and then I'll make a motion here because I already pushed the motion button, so I'm doing it right, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with what Councilman Kell said, and if times were normal where, you know, inflation on construction projects was a couple of %, something like that, I think that'd be a valid point. Two things happened here. I think the improvements to the boulevard were a little bit more than they had expected. And secondly, we're living through a time right now where construction costs the inflation on construction costs is just unbelievable. I mean, upwards of 40% in some cases. It's just a tough time to do estimating for any project of this kind. And frankly, we wouldn't get these kind of amenities in our city if it wasn't for developers willing to take the risk. Will they make money? I hope they do, because they need to make money to continue in business. I think this is a legitimate request, and I will support it, and I will make a motion to approve.
Okay, have a motion and a second from Councilman Duncan. Okay. Any further comment? Okay, we'll set the screen for a vote.
The mayor's not voting, is he? Okay. So we have 8 yes with Deputy Mayor Kell voting no. The motion carries.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Rhiannon. We'll move on now to non-action items. Madam Clerk.
To 2035 CIP and the 2026 to 2028 CIB.
Okay. Before you get started, Sylvia and Josh, it's been indicated to me that some of the council members would like about a 10-minute break. So if you would give us an opportunity to recess for 10 minutes, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. So we will be recessed for 10 minutes.
Free water, we'll drink it.
Yeah. Okay, we're back from our recess, and we will now move forward with a non-action item, discussion of the 2026 to 2035 capital improvement plan. And we have before us City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the governing body. Sylvia Davis, our Utilities Director, Josh McInerney, our Budget and Finance Division Director, will lead us through this item.
Thanks, City Manager. Good evening, Mayor, governing body. So tonight, our third meeting about the CIP. So just as a refresher, 3 weeks ago, we talked about the non-citywide half-cent sales tax programs for public works. Those were either bonded, cash funded, or other funding sources programs. And the week prior to that, we talked a lot about our citywide half-cent sales tax. And just to review, and then next week will be kind of be an open mic night for any questions on the CIP and any amendments council would like to propose for the CIP. But tonight we're talking about the utilities projects. Those are funded by the water rates, stormwater rates, wastewater rates, and then I guess I'll turn it over to Sylvia to kind of go into deep details on those projects.
Sylvia?
All right, thank you. I do want to just shout out the video that our city communications team made. I know we played it before Public Works did their presentation on their projects. And if you have some free time and you go back and revisit that, just call attention to a lot of the projects and the work that was called out. In the second half of that related to utilities work, and it highlights the 2024 CIP projects that we worked on with these funds. So tonight, I'm going to run through just over $239 million worth of CIP projects and programs that we are planning for over the next 5 years. Keep in mind, as we talked a lot about last year, our programmatic approach allows us to remain flexible in our planning efforts and adjust our priorities as emergencies come up and as we coordinate with Public Works and their projects that they're doing. These projects are developed and prioritized using our master plans and studies, staff recommendations that consider maintenance and operations efforts and longevity of our assets, as well as feedback from our citizens. These also ensure that we're addressing all major areas of our utility systems, and we're not allowing one section to go unaddressed while we prioritize another. So we'll start with water. And we have here an overview of our water programs where you can see that we've allocated funding for programs to address water main replacement, our water treatment plant, towers, pump stations, meter vaults, and other needs. When a year's worth of funding may not be adequate to address something, we'll take funding from a different year and allocate the remaining funds over the out years. So again, we're trying to be flexible with these funds and be able to pay for some of the priority level projects that we identify. The total combined over this 5-year period is just over $117 million of water program work. We'll start with water main replacement program. This focuses on restoring water mains in areas with extensive break and repair history. As you know, we talk about it a lot, consequence of failure, really using a data-driven approach here. We also have to prioritize our projects and plan them in conjunction with our citywide half-cent sales tax work and other street improvement projects. And this water distribution system that we maintain and operate is comprised of approximately 900 miles of water mains, and our funding supports our goal of a 150-year replacement cycle for those water mains, which equate to approximately 6 miles a year. So through this funding, we have $11 million in construction planned for 2025 and $12 million in 26. Much of this line work, again, is in conjunction with our public works projects, but it also includes work in our Westboro, Knollwood, and Montera neighborhoods. And then with any available funding we may have in excess of those projects, we're planning to work on Southwest Morningside, 21st to 25th Street, and then California to Golden from 10th to 11th Street. Next, you'll see some bullets for starting our water booster pump station rehab program. 2026 is our first year of this program, and it focuses on upgrading existing in-service water booster pump stations to meet water distribution needs. Currently, we're replacing VFDs and making electrical upgrades at our Fairlawn pump station, which requires significant funding. And again, the remaining out years will fund smaller upgrades in our pump stations, including interior painting and some metal work as needed as we do inspections in those pump stations. Following that, we have water tower rehabilitation. This may include structural improvements, regulatory updates, interior and exterior cleaning and coating. Work that we have planned includes our existing Montera water tower. We do have a new water tower over in Montera, but our existing Montera tower is planned for this year, 2025, and then we'll be working on Quincy Tower in 26. Just a reminder, our last tower rehabilitation project was our California tower. Following that, we have our meter vault replacement program. We put this program into place to address some of our large meter vaults that are really in bad shape in terms of either not being up to city specifications, not being extremely safe to work in because they may be crumbling or falling apart, or they're inaccessible and we can't do testing on those to ensure we're getting accurate readings. So with this program, we did attempt to bid out several vaults, but were disappointed with the high labor costs associated with those bids, so we went back to the drawing board again and are looking at modifying our specifications as we work with our vault fabricators and some of our contractors and our own engineering teams. The hope is that we've come up with a plan that's much easier to install, more economic for this program, and will allow us to finally start putting some of these in place and tackling our highest 30 priority locations with this funding. All right, moving along. I'm buzzing through these because we have quite a few slides, and I want to get to the end so you guys can ask whatever questions you might have. In regards to our water treatment plant rehab program, this program identifies maintenance and rehab projects of the 18 buildings on our plant site, and they may include security updates, building repairs, pump and motor repairs, et cetera. Currently, our projects include pump rehab for our residual pumps and work at our River Weir crest cap to address low water periods at our intakes and some of the issues we're having there. Next, we have our hydrant valve rehab and replacement program. So this program helps us address deteriorating hydrants and valves in our water distribution system. This is a cash-funded program that we're building funding for to pay for a system-wide evaluation. I spoke to this a little bit last year. In the meantime, with our water main break counts being much lower than we annually experience, we've been able to rehab or replace 130 hydrants year to date out of our operating budget. And as we've whittled that list down, we're making plans to start addressing valves in the system that are broken or inaccessible and have impacted our ability to narrow our outages down. So I just mentioned that because we do have a need to assess that in totality so that we can have a good plan of action. Right now, we're just working through old needs that have been identified through customer complaints or our routine work. Following that, we have our water fleet replacement program. You will see this program in our stormwater and wastewater utility funds as well. But this ensures our equipment remains current and effectively maintained. We have $400,000 annually set aside to address vehicles and equipment across our meter, maintenance, and distribution sections. And typical purchases include dump trucks and backhoes. And then if we have funds remaining, we will fill in with our crew trucks as we're able to. We have a couple of standalone projects at our water treatment facility. We have the East Intake Rehab Project, which includes structural repairs and modifications of concrete and steel work. We have some mechanical repairs and replacements, including screen housing, valves, and piping. This is planned for 2026 and is budgeted at $5.24 million. We also have our West Filter Rehab Project, which looks to replace our dual media of the West filters, address some lighting and electrical HVAC issues. Again, planned for 2026 and is budgeted at just over $5 million. Once we complete those two projects, I'm really proud to say that we'll have completed all of the major projects that were identified in our 2017 master plan. So our master plans don't just sit on the shelf. We are trying to get through all of those projects. And after that, we will look to take that funding and start working on our chemical building, our west intake, and east plant basin. All right, zone optimization projects. Many of you know we have 5 zones. Our distribution system is divided into 5 zones that cover the city. And to address those needs across the city, we cycle funding for projects through each of these zones. Most recently, we completed tower projects in Montera and West zones. So you see they've moved down on the list for more projects planned for 2030. Then currently we're working on the central zone, and that has projects that were previously approved in our 2025 CIP. So that's why that one's moved down to the bottom, because we're currently working through those improvements. Now we look to, through the southeast zone improvements, connect some dead-end lines to improve circulation and water quality issues in our High Crest neighborhood, some work along Gage Boulevard, and possibly Deer Creek between 8th and 10th Street as funding allows. All right, moving to stormwater. Again, we have a stormwater program overview. These CIP projects include funding to address our stormwater conveyance system, levee system, pump stations, and stream and channel work. Total combined, we are looking at $47 million plus. Stormwater conveyance, these projects address rehabilitation or replacing of existing infrastructure through our conveyance system to ensure continued operation and reduce maintenance, support other infrastructure improvements. I will say most, actually all of the funding that we currently have for this program allows us to support our city half-cent sales tax projects. And that's where that funding goes right now. That's our current rate support funding that just allow us to keep up with street projects, which is very good. We're happy to do that. But if we had additional funds, and you'll see we spend those in some of our other programs, we would address some different stormwater conveyance issues. But right now we can support public works, and that's good. We need to do that to be able to do whole projects, and most of that work looks like replacement of corrugated metal pipe underground. That just wreaks havoc, and most people don't even know is there until the street starts to fail. So, stream and channel restoration. Many of you who have sat in or on and watched the hardworking Public Infrastructure Committee meetings know that we just discussed some work at our Ward Martin Creek site, and we have several projects that have been identified in a study there where we are addressing some of the channel and bank protection along that channel. Right now, we're working on Site B, and then next up would be Sites C and F, which are near 10th and Reynolds and south of 8th Avenue Bridge, again, presented in front of the Public Infrastructure Committee. And then we have a program to address best management practices. This helps us comply with our requirements in our National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permitting, and also helps us address detention ponds so we can address quality and quantity throughout this BMP program as we implement additional infrastructure across the city. And we have our stormwater pump station rehab program, which allows for proactive rehab or replacement of our stormwater pump stations to reduce emergency repairs. Currently, we are completing our stormwater master plan, our pump station master plan, and have projects planned to address electrical upgrades to East Oakland stormwater pump station, and then we'll evaluate the next projects after we complete that master plan. Then we have our levee asset repair and rehab program to address maintenance and performance of critical infrastructure along our levee systems. Currently, this funding is supporting the right bank to levee raise work on Soldier Creek east of Minokan Road, and 4 outfall structures that we're going to be replacing that are currently under design. Our drainage correction program is a program that addresses drainage problems amongst private properties, 2 or more, that are experiencing localized flooding. Currently, we are working on projects at Santa Fe Court, Southwest 28th Terrace, Oakview at Shunga Creek, Southeast 43rd in Virginia, and these projects were, again, addressing localized flooding that impacted 2 or more homes. These can be identified in some of our master plans, but more often they are identified through customer complaints and things that they've been experiencing routinely. Lastly, we have our stormwater fleet replacement program, again, addressing our fleet needs across our stormwater programs, backhoes, dump trucks, and Vector trucks. With our stormwater funding and then our wastewater fleet funding, we alternate funding to support our large Vector trucks as they perform work on both stormwater and wastewater and are very costly pieces of equipment. We do have a couple of standalone stormwater projects, including Prairie Road, which is planned for 2026. This project has a budget of almost $3.4 million and upsizes some storm sewer along Prairie Road. This project stemmed from our 2020 drainage study after a major rain event in July of 2020. And then this project should wrap up the work that was identified in that study as well. Southeast California Avenue and Southeast 4th Street is a project that we have planned for 2026 and 2027 with a budget of just over $5 million. Again, addressing capacity concerns in the stormwater basin and alleviates flooding issues along 4th and 5th Streets during a 100-year rain event. This project follows recommendations from our stormwater master plan. And we need to do this project so that we can see the impact that it has before we can address any other improvements needed in that basin. Some standalone levee projects that we have, different than the Rays work, we have the Minokan Road tieback project. This addresses, again, flooding along the North Topeka and Soldier Creek levee system. This is a project that has a $5.2 million budget planned for 2026. However, that is dependent on some federal funding. We are also cost sharing with the North Topeka Drainage District on this project. And this will be the last improvement that we need to do to secure certification of our North Topeka levee system. This is a project that we have been successful in getting through the first round of requirements to be considered for a BRIC grant, and we have applied for that BRIC grant and are waiting for some decisions to be made there and some word back. Following that, we have Shunga Creek flood mitigation, which many of you have heard this project be mentioned several times throughout your time on council. We do have some work planned for 2026 that includes $1 million worth of design work that we are funding. The rest of the 2.1 is made up of federal funding. There are no funds appropriated for this yet, but we have heard some scuttle that we may be seeing that, so we are just preparing to be ready if this funding does come to fruition. We'll be able to start work on the design of that improvement. Okay, moving on to our water programs, our wastewater programs. We have $74.6 million worth of funding needs over the next 5 years for our wastewater pump stations, lining and replacement programs, our facility rehab programs at our Oakland and North Topeka plants, odor control, inflow and infiltration, and then fleet again. So starting off, we'll talk about our wastewater lining and replacement work. This program helps us address I'm off a page here. This helps us identify pipes that can be rehabilitated before they require emergency repairs and open cut replacements. We are utilizing this funding to address needs that come up through some of our work with our public works projects. Again, if we can use this funding and help do some work that prevents us from tearing up more of the surface than we need to, that's certainly that's what we want to do. We want to extend the life of our investment and of our infrastructure as long as we can. And then we have our pump station rehab work that will help us identify and address pump station needs. We have done a condition assessment of all of our city-owned pump stations and are working through 15 years worth of recommendations. Currently, Billard Pump Station is under construction, and then we're making improvements to Shawnee 2 Pump Station, which actually will allow us to eliminate Shawnee 1 Pump Station, so we can reduce the amount of assets that we are maintaining. And after that, we will begin work on Redbud and Alkire Pump Stations. Again, I don't want to skip over some of our lining work. We are utilizing a portion of this funding to conduct our citywide condition assessment, and then future lining projects will be prioritized by risk and consequence of failure per these assessments. Some of the examples of work that we are addressing through this, again, is street work, and then Southeast 29th through 21st quarter sections, and then Southeast Adams to Southeast Indiana quarter sections. So We have done some televising. We continue to expand the televising and assessment of our infrastructure. And then through that, we identify what infrastructure would be a good candidate for lining. All right. Facility rehab. This work is dedicated to funding needs at, again, our Oakland and North Topeka pump stations, treatment plants. This work includes gas system upgrades that we've identified, different building upgrades that we need to start working on, some secondary clarifier work, ferric system replacement at Oakland, and boiler replacement at our North Topeka plant. Following that, we have our odor control program. We currently spend a significant amount of money in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to address chemicals through our operating budget to assess and address odor complaints and corrosion issues that occur from gas buildup throughout our sanitary system. That is a very short-sighted solution to a problem that doesn't really solve the problem. So we do have a odor control study that we undertook, and out of that we have some work that has been identified, and we are currently working through phase 1 of that odor control study improvement, and that includes construction on the odor control system at Central Park Pump Station and Rockfire Pump Station improvements. And then following that, we will see what kind of impact that has on our gases, and if we can bring those down a little bit or significantly is the hope, then we can better address needs at Wanamaker and Ash Street pump stations. Our I&I program, inflow and infiltration program. This work helps us dedicate some of the smaller sanitary lines we have, and mostly we use this funding to focus on alley improvement projects that Public Works undergoes, and we can follow along. A lot of times, some of the work that they're doing is caused by failing infrastructure in those alleyways. So if we can help improve the infrastructure underneath before they redo their alleys, then we can extend the impact of their improvements. Recent projects include the 1600 block of Tyler, the 1900 block of Lincoln to Buchanan, and then we were also able to complete 2 main replacement projects in the Valley Park neighborhood around the 25th and 26th and McVicker area. Following that, we plan on being in the 1100 block of Southwest Mission and the 1600 block of Southwest 22nd Street. And then last but not least, we have our wastewater fleet replacement program, again, addressing our vehicle and equipment needs across our maintenance, operations, and collections sections in our wastewater utility. All right, so that was a quick buzz through a lot of money's worth of CIP projects.
Just want to apologize. You did great. We had a little distraction up here to begin with, but you did great and ran right through it. And I want to say thank you for everything you guys do in your department. It's a very unrecognized department, and people take for granted that when they turn on their faucet, water's going to come out and it's going to be clean water, or when they flush or dump something down the drain, it's leaving their property. So, you guys do a great job of trying to catch up. Something that there was so much deferred maintenance for so many years that you guys are behind the 8 ball constantly trying to catch up on replacing lines and taking care of issues. You guys do a great job adjusting as the KDHE or the feds or even the city's needs, having to adjust and kind of go there. By going through the Citizens Academy a couple of years ago, you guys seem to be very innovative, also trying to find better ways to do things, and rather than saying, well, we've done it this way for 20 years, we're going to continue to do it that way. So I think the only negative is you broke the Dobler rule on slides. So, but I just want to say thank you for everything, and all your crews do, because they're on call, they go out late at night in the cold and the heat. So
Absolutely. We have a really great team, from operationally and all those folks responding to our emergencies to our planners and the folks that are managing our budget, and again, working with good partners over on the public works side and finance side. They help us out too a lot, so give credit to them too.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Dobler?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good job, Sylvia. Appreciate it. Good presentation. Question for Josh. It looks like, and I'm going back to the CIP book, between the 25 and the 26 adopted CIP and the proposed CIP, in terms of revenue bonds, there's a pretty good variance, negative variance, which is a good thing. Looks like, gosh, over 4 years, maybe 28 million bucks or so that's less in 26 than we had projected, I guess, in 25. Can you speak just for a minute to the revenue bond debt that we have?
Yeah, so I can send this report to the council, and this was also in the quarterly report that was sent out tonight. In the back section, there's geo debt, revenue bond debt, and any other temp notes that we have. But our current revenue bond debt, if I recall correctly, is around $370 million. We have a AA bond rating. Now, $370 million is a high number, but that's less than our sister cities of Lawrence, KCK, maybe except Olathe, I can't remember on them. And then one other thing too is the debt's important with the ability to pay it back. So our minimum debt service coverage ratio is 1.25, and I think at the end of 24 we're between 1.85 and 1.9, somewhere in there. So we're well above our minimum debt service coverage ratio. So, and then the final thing is, and I know we talked a lot about a month ago, the geo bond side where we're bonding at 15 and 20 years. There's the debate there. Typically for revenue bonds, we're in the 30-year period for the most part. So that's just a little quick and dirty analysis. And I can provide anything else that I may have forgotten. But
Yeah, thank you. No, that's good information. I think what I'd like to see is how these projections affect our overall, just a projection of where our total debt service is going to be over the next 4 or 5 years based on this CIP. Probably looks better this year than it did last year.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I'll provide what our current amortization table looks like, and we'll plug in new figures given percentage rates to see what it looks like over the next 10 to 15 years. So I'll do that.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mayor.
Councilman Duncan.
Just a quick question. Under the wastewater programs, pump station rehabilitation, you indicate replacement, rehabilitation, or elimination of city-owned wastewater pump stations. Are there pump stations we think we can eliminate?
Yep, one of those that I mentioned was, let me find it here, Shunga, right? Shunga or Shawnee? Shawnee. So if we can address the flow and volume of wastewater through one pump station with improved pumping systems, things of that nature, we can potentially eliminate another. So we've done that a couple of times and been able to eliminate entire pump stations. They're small pump stations, but we're able to do that with improvements in a very close proximity. But again, a little bit of improvement in one will help us take out another and less overall.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. No surprise, you caught my attention talking about actually achieving a goal in your long-range plan so that you could kind of put the entire inventory of whatever was in that category in preventive maintenance and current maintenance and start moving into another sector. I really appreciated that. I know, obviously, your plan is complex and big, but could you give us I like hearing that. Could you give us an idea overall about how you're doing on that, you say 2017 plan?
So our 2017 facility, our master plan for our water treatment plant, so major projects that were identified out of that, with this completion of these next two projects will make that whole. There will be additional work that is identified, maybe lesser priority, but we will continue to try to maintain those assets on the cycle that they need to be maintained, and then we will have to do another study down the road, likely in 2035. Nicole and I were talking about the next study being a few years out, but do another study to see where we're at and where some of our major projects may be occurring. There's a lot of other need out there, even at our plants, but again, happy to be able to complete something. I think that gets lost as we keep flipping through projects and more work identified. It's nice to be able to finish up something that someone started long ago and be able to say
Kudos
we're
to you.
doing it, yes. Yep.
I've been asking on some other elements of the CIP, and nobody seemed to remember where those plans were, because I just wanted to know how well we were doing, and so it's really great to hear.
Yeah, there's been a lot of great work done to set us up to be able to accomplish those things, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you both very much for the
Thank you.
presentation. Okay, we've come to public comment. I have 3 persons signed up for this. Ms. Cheryl Richardson. Cheryl Richardson. Cheryl Richardson. Okay. Mr. Henry McClure.
Good evening, Your Honor. You get a pass today because of technology. That's just me being nice. One time. I hope that you guys could practice what you preach up here about inclusion. And let's talk about public comment when it comes to in the committees. And what a better place to start public comment about inclusion is in this finance committee over this, or in Spencer's committee about the issue. I've talked to several people about having public comment in committee, and that's a beautiful start. It really is. You have a whole statement about us getting involved and making the dreams come true of your community. But we've got to be able to do it. I think these meetings would go shorter. They'd go much shorter if we just had public comment also in committee, because we need the time to express ourselves. And now let's talk about true public involvement and where our taxpayer dollars go, and that's in the NGOs. And let's use Go Topeka for an example of a non-government organization that I can't go make public comment at that, and then the rulings in a JETO meeting are made in they come from the Go Topeka meeting. And if you're not a chamber member, I mean, so many decisions from our tax dollars are made up there. And what's the difference between that and Washington, D.C.? I feel helpless as a taxpayer to the way Washington, D.C. treats us in the past. But there's no difference in the way Go Topeka and all of our economic development money goes. I mean, think about it. We're taking sales tax dollars. I just got lectured in the hallway about a project. Think about it. We're taking sales tax dollars and using it. Your NGO, Go Topeka, gives it to 100 charities. That's not fair. We shouldn't be taking tax dollars to give out to charities. Charity starts at home. So we need to make some changes here about inclusion. I've come down with some decent ideas. I thought trying to give a sewer line that was going to cost $100,000 up in behind Ace Hardware there in California Crossing. All I asked for was $100,000. I'd made a mistake. I should have kept the easement, but I thought that would be a good use of economic development money. It would have paid back in a year. It wasn't approved. I've never gotten a deal approved. You know well as I do, tearing that hotel down would have been a good idea. But all these decisions are made up top. And sometimes we as the lowly little taxpayers, we feel that those monies and things are just to keep you guys in power. Thanks for your time this evening. There's a lot more that I got in my mind, but I appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you.
Kenneth, do you need another minute?
Man, that was very kind to offer me for a minute. Thank you, sir. I'm going to run for mayor, and I'll get my minute if I get elected. Thank you.
Mr. Lazone Grace.
Maybe I have enough to go around. Want me to just get started, or you want to wait for the?
It's up to you if you want us to have that.
Yes, I do.
Before you start.
Yes, sir.
Just give us a second.
Hopefully there's enough for y'all.
Short one.
Am I short one?
I'll share it with you, Mayor.
Well, I think I gave it.
We're good.
Okay.
When you're ready, Lazone.
Okay. Lazone Grace, thank you again, City Council, Mayor, for this moment to speak with you. I'm sharing this here because considering the conversation that we had earlier, I figured that I would go to the federal website to see what type of language that they were having to mention that population that we work with and care about. And so one of the places I went to was HUD Section 3, and I think that's what I shared a copy with you that came from here, sort of to state that they're really focusing on opportunities for the low and very low income people and businesses that are owned by low and very low income persons. At the last sentence, it says, these opportunities are both sex and race neutral. So therefore, this must be a scrubbed language from the federal site. But that shouldn't take away from the intent of the HUD Section 3, something that I brought up for many years that I think should be relooked at. I think Mr. Pitts was correct that this is an opportunity of saying we can do things better. Because when you look at the overview on the type of projects, building and rehabilitating housing, improving a variety of infrastructures, building community centers, and helping families achieve stability and advancement, that really fits in line with what we want for the community. And then I look at the articles basically on the $9.1 million, that's something for, housing and improvement. It said that the budget was broken up from 5 categories: housing development, community development, neighborhood services, homeless, and social services, which really falls right in line with those things that low and very low income people experience. I'm not exactly sure if a lot of people here know what HUD Section 3 is. I don't believe that it has been maximized or utilized as it should have been over the years. I think that with all these projects on affordable housing and land banks and rehabilitating buildings, I've mentioned this before when public comment came up for CDBG funds. I'll mention it again. And I don't think that these are just really restricted to, when you look at the overview and what the intent of HUD Section 3 was, it shouldn't really be just pigeonholed into HUD funding. We're talking about public fund projects, whether it came from HUD or is it part of this 40-some million dollars, that is federal funding. Where can the city possibly put some type of a framework, whether it's HUD funding, CDBG, whether it's these allocations for affordable housing and other things that are spending on for these target populations, low-income people that we say that we want to help? How can that fit into the conversation? It's pretty clear that it says Section 3 requirements helps promote training, employment, contracting, and other economic opportunities for low and very low income persons. I would probably throw no income persons off in there just as well. Training, employment, contracting, other economic opportunities. Can you really state where jobs, training, contracts is really going through Section 3 for HUD on projects that are being funded in this city? If not, why not? I think that that should be a part of your discussion. You know, if you are going to be revisiting this DEI conversation, because even though the wording has been stripped out of underrepresented, underserved, underutilized, those things there, we're still dealing with the low and very low income population. Income impact avenues is great. Programs and services are great, but nothing beats a job.
Excuse me, before Councilman Miller asks, would you like to have a few more minutes?
Yes, sir.
How many minutes would you like?
2 is fine, thank you.
Okay, 2. All those in favor of allowing 2? Aye. Thank you. Proceed.
Well, thank you, Councilman Miller and crew. I don't know where to begin or whether this is a committee type of thing. I think that millions of dollars that they were talking about on projects here, where does job training fit in? There was a program that dated back HUD initially in 1992 called a Step Up HUD program. It was sort of like an apprentice, but I sort of see it as a pre-apprenticeship. The intent seems to be clear that the federal government and our city really do want to find some ways to promote the training, employment, contracting, other economic opportunities. I sent an email to individuals. I believe that the housing trust fund and some of this affordable housing, that whoever the developers are that's going to be doing these things, you may not mandate it, but it doesn't mean that you can't offer something that, this is something that the city wants to do. And we have these organizations with training programs, pre-apprenticeship programs, or what have you, to see, sure, how many apprenticeship, OJTs, opportunities could be made available on a $250 million, project at Washburn, a $12 million project for affordable housing. Within this $9 million, where is the job training and the things that are going to help buffer up these businesses owned by low-income individuals and entrepreneurs? So I'm just throwing this out here for a phase of discussion. You know that hopefully after you read it, go look up HUD Section 3, go and speak with your people on the inside, see how many businesses are hiring Section 3. How many businesses owned by Section 3 are actually getting contracts? Are there any training programs provided by any of these? If the answer is no, then it sounds good and sexy that you have CDBG and HUD Section 3 on your books, but the fact is you're not doing anything with it that can really make it empowering. Let's move people from just getting a meal or sack lunch, and let's give them the skills to work on these projects that we're paying for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman, council members, mayor.
Okay. We move now to announcements, and I've been asked if I may allow, just get a little bit out of order. I'm going to go first with Councilwoman Ortiz for announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I need to go home, so I'm going to Zoom from home on our executive session. But I do have some announcements. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, in 2024, we put up 115 residents of smoke alarms. And in 2025, to date, we have put up 141. So, and we're still putting them up. So if you're in need of one, please contact me or contact the fire chief. I know there's somebody out there in the audience that needs a smoke detector. They're just not stepping forward because they're embarrassed. Don't be embarrassed. Step up to the plate. If you need one, you need one. That's the bottom line. Okay, Fight the Blight is this Saturday for East Topeka South, East Topeka North, and East End. Drag it to the curb. They will not accept tires, kids, grandparents, or any of those, but East Topeka, let's clean up our area and make it look really, really nice so code doesn't come through there, and then you give me a call. And then I just want to leave you with this. I think this is very, very important. if you read it, you know, they say you retain more if you read it, so just read about our Public Infrastructure Committee. And I get the comment that, from staff all the time, that we're hardworking, and we are. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Okay, now we'll go to announcements. Madam Clerk.
Okay, first of all, tomorrow there's a Citizen Government Review Committee from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. in the City Hall Conference Room, if anybody wants to tune into that. They will be continuing to work on their final recommendations to the governing body that will come to you guys in June for consideration. On the May 13th agenda, we have one service recognition for Dora Watson, Civil Service Commission. We have 2 board appointments, Americans with Disability Act Advisory Council and Human Relations Commission. 2 presentations, the Topeka Police Department initiatives and City of Topeka 2024 to 2024 unsheltered programming and investment review. Consent agenda, we have 2 noise exceptions. On the action items, we have TGT disbursement to Noto Arts and Entertainment District in an amount of $52,000. Discussions, we have National Night Out events for 2025 framework. Discussion on EMS Unlimited franchise agreements for, that's ambulance service, and then discussion on a professional services contract renewal with Kansas Legal Services, Inc. for eviction defense program administration, and then discussion on the CIP and CIB.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. So last week before, I had an opportunity to spent some time with Jeff Leidick and his sons Grant and Andy, 4 and 6 years old. They wanted an opportunity to meet with the mayor, I mean, because they considered us celebrities because we're on TV. And so they had an opportunity to come in, and I didn't tell you, Mr. Mayor, but we brought them over here to sit in your seat, and they said they wanted to be either the mayor or city manager when they grew up. And so just wanted to give a shout out to Grant and Andy. It was a pleasure meeting you guys, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilman Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have anything for tonight.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
This Saturday is the United States Postal Service food drive, Stamp Out Hunger. So if you're interested in that, please check that out online, see what they're taking and how to donate. This last weekend, myself and Councilman Duncan were volunteering with the Red Cross at a yellow ribbon deployment event. It's a lot of fun. Me being a veteran, it's fun to get out there and interact with the military, the active duty again. I actually ran into one of my War Dogs baseball teammates, and then also a guy I went to high school with. They were both there. They're soon deploying. Mother's Day is this weekend, this Sunday. My wife and my daughters and I celebrated this last weekend, so it's one of those things, you know, mothers are sometimes way underappreciated for what they do for all of us. And they, you know, I have a great wife that takes great care of my daughters and takes care of all their needs, and I kind of just float on by sometimes, and I'm greatly appreciated for what she does for my daughters. Mental Health Month, going back to the military aspect of things, as it was said, not all disabilities are visible. And a lot of our military veterans deal with PTSD and other mental health disorders, and you know, I'm diagnosed myself, so it's one of those things of please, you know, always try to learn more. The more you learn, the more you can help. And May is Military Appreciation Month. We celebrated that yesterday outside the Holiday Plaza. The mayor and city manager led it with some of our military guests. Councilman Duncan and Hofer were both there. The military made me who I am today. It taught me leadership, responsibility, integrity. It taught me when you think you have given all you can give, there's a little bit more that you can give. I try to live by the core values of the United States Navy: honor, courage, and commitment. I try to live that way because will be forever linked to the United States Navy, and it will forever be a part of me. It's one of those things, you're kind of in this club when you've served, and it's great when you're around each other and can help each other and work with each other. And just like that event this last weekend, whenever I have a chance to work with the military, I'm going to step right up and do it, because it brings me back to who I became as an adult. So I think that's it. I was stalling for Councilwoman Ortiz to get home.
Okay. Thank you. Councilman Miller.
Nothing for me, sir. Thank you.
Councilman Dobler.
It's a laugh or cry day.
Councilman Duncan.
Just a couple quick things, Mayor. The first is I want to offer clarification. You guys have graciously elected me chair of the Policy and Finance Committee multiple times while I've been on this council. I served as chair of the TGT Committee multiple times. When I'm chair, my committees have always allowed public comment. Anyone who shows up to those meetings knows that. Any of my colleagues who sit in those meetings knows that. And in fact, the rules that I have posted online on the website tell people that public comment's allowed, and so that is not going to change regardless of how important or less important an issue is. And so when we have those meetings regarding the ordinances and other public comment, the rules will not change. Public comment will still be allowed in that committee. I want to honor, if you've been in Topeka long enough, you got to know the voice of John Lee Hooker pretty well for 30 plus years. He passed away after a battle with cancer this week, and so I just wanted to prayers to him and his family, but he was one of those seminal voices that if you lived around here, you popped on, you just knew that was his voice, and it was kind of always in the background. And then lastly, my dream of having a name town of the Topeka Screamin' Taters will have to continue to be a dream. The Topeka hockey team announced their name will be the Scarecrows, which we knew was down to the 5, and mine didn't make the cut anyway, but still. So maybe the next team can get that name, but I'm glad the team has a name, and it looks like they have a pretty good ownership group, so I'm looking forward to when they get started this October. So thank you, Mayor.
Screaming Taters.
He likes it. He likes it.
I didn't say I liked it. I was just making sure that's what he suggested. Councilwoman Hofer.
Nothing tonight.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hiller. Hiller.
Thank you. I just want to say again to thank everybody on the council and the staff for the thought that went into the event, the issues that we had tonight at the meeting, and the way we processed it and so on. It matters, and it went well, I think. Public Health and Safety Committee always has taken, every committee I have been on or chaired has always taken public comment as well, since you brought that up. Social service grants, policy and finance when I was on it, so I'm not sure who doesn't, but good point to bring up. Third and last is that when we recognized Bike Month earlier, they sort of glossed over the fact that next Friday at noon is the annual Bike with the City Manager opportunity. And it's leaving at noon, as usual, from the front steps of City Hall, as far as I know, and our new city manager has stepped up for that exciting event. So encourage everybody, get your bikes out, bump up the tires, get the dust off so nobody knows, and come on out for a Bike with the City Manager, not this Friday, but next Friday, the 16th.
And that they don't have to have a bike, there'll be a few there.
I'm supposed to add that if you don't have a bike, who should they let know? Will?
They'll show up.
You can just show up and there'll be some spare bikes, so come along.
EMS will be there for
EMS.
We're not going there. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
I have nothing, Mayor.
Thank you. I just want to follow up real quickly on the praise and comments from Deputy Mayor with regards to military appreciation event that we had on Monday. And again, publicly thank my very, very tenacious executive assistant, Jane Murray, for bringing all those elements together. It took a lot of work to get everybody invited and coordinated. And if you didn't get a chance, you really missed a good opportunity to see the skills of the student body from Topeka West High School. Their band played very good, played appropriate music, and did a great job. It was impressive to see that drill team out there. They did a lot of things that I would never take a chance at, throwing rifles up in the air backwards and catching them. I mean, they were really impressive. They did a great job. And it was good to see a mix of retired veterans and the young students that came forward and received recognition for them making the decision to go into the military service to serve our country. I think it speaks well of the city of Topeka and how it provides a variety of opportunities for the young folks in Topeka. It's a place where you can learn skills, they can translate into the private sector, and so it's just as important to choose something like that that will help you through your life as it is to choose a college. So I don't want to ever diminish that choice by our youth. So I want to thank all of them for showing up and for all the command staff that showed up. It was really impressive to have them there acknowledging the youth of our city. So that was my comments that I want to wrap up. And again, as Deputy Mayor said, happy Mother's Day to all the people out there who have mothers still with them. I wish I had mine. Happy Mother's Day. So now there is a need for an executive session if the city attorney will read.
First, Mr. Mayor, I think you need to probably extend past the 10 p.m. rule.
Ooh, okay. Is there a motion to extend beyond our 10 o'clock? Motion in a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay.
I'll take it. The motion would be to recess into executive session not to exceed 60 minutes to give legal advice on multiple various topics, including litigation, general legal advice, other confidential issues. Under the Attorney-Client Privilege Act is allowed under KSA 7543-19B2. The open meeting will resume in this room of the governing body chambers. The following staff will be necessary to assist the governing body in its deliberations: City Attorney Stanley and other staff members as needed.
Okay. Heard the need to move into executive session. Is there a motion from the body?
Motion.
Motion from Councilman Miller, second from the Deputy Mayor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sylvia's not here. So we will recess into executive session. Give yourselves about 5 minutes and then try to get back here as quickly as you can.
Hey, I wanted to ask Brett.
Okay. We've concluded our deliberations during the executive session. No action has been taken. No further business coming before this body. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.